Hey guys. Part 12 of What If Naruto was sealed and woke up after 2,000 years. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 34. Please explain this. Location unknown. They put Naruto in a room that just screamed interview. The hallmarks were all there, from the nondescriptive walls, the one door leading in or out, and the table with a chair on one side, where his butt was parked. The only thing that was off about it all was that there were two chairs on the other side of the table. Usually, he only had to deal with one. He had fallen asleep in the ship and woke up here on the table. It was considerate enough they had been done that instead of just tossing him onto the floor, something he wouldn't have put past these people. He had been in here for probably about an hour or more and had spent most of that time screaming inside his own head, trying to find the Biju and get them to respond to him. But he hadn't gotten a single beep, and it was nerve-wracking. He had had at least Kurama inside his head since the night of his birth, and then he brought in the other 8 Biju after tearing the Jubi back into separate pieces. He had lost count of the number of times they had driven him up a wall with their sniping and arguing, not to mention their downright snarkiness. But now, he couldn't hear them. The silence was deafening and horrible. He wanted them back. Cammy, did he want them back? The door opened silently and Miranda and Jacob walked in. So, how long was I out this time around? He asked them as they sat down. A decade if I'm lucky? Please, Commander, there's no need to be sarcastic, Miranda told him. You were only out for a few hours. While you were out, we had taken the liberty of running a few tests on you to see if the tribe had done anything to you. If you've been watching me on the screens as I was getting out, I think you would have seen that they did do something to me. What I want to know right now is what the hell happened to me. Why can't I use my chakra? Even though he was trying to stay calm about it, there was a note of hysteria in his voice. If either of them noticed it, they didn't say. As far as we can tell, they have placed several inhibitors inside your body, on your tenketsu, Jacob told him. While technically speaking they haven't stopped the flow of your chakra, that's all they are doing in passive mode. Any manual attempt by you to utilize your chakra will cause the inhibitors will activate and disrupt your chakra's flow to the extent you know. You can say it, the blonde replied. It causes me to fall down to the ground screaming like a baby. He considered asking for a kunai so he could test whether or not his healing had been hindered as well. But factors made him stop. If he got a kunai, where would he stab himself to prevent serious injury? And if his healing didn't work and he had chosen poorly, it would slow him down. Something like that, with his chakra being blocked the way it was not worth risking finding out. What about the Biju? He decided to ask. Have they been taken out of me? No, they're not, Miranda told him, making sigh in relief. We've checked your seal and it remains intact. However, some inhibitors have been placed in the tenketsu feeding into it. For all intents and purposes, I'm afraid that your control over the Biju has been taken from you. Oh great, just what I needed. He didn't bother to correct her, not seeing the point of it. Now that's out of the way, there are a few things we need to take care of. Do we really have to do this, Miranda? Jacob asked. He seemed a little embarrassed for some reason. We must be sure, Jacob. For all we know, the tribe could very well have duped us with a convincing fake. She turned her attention back to the blonde sitting on the other side of the table. I'm going to ask you a few questions now. Fine, Naruto said. Her Omni tool came alight, and she held it in front of her. It's said in the history books that during Oto's and Suna's invasion of Konoha, you took on Sabaka no Gaara by yourself, chasing after him when he fled from the stadium, and finishing him with a solid right cross. Wrong on 3 points, he instantly told her. And they are? 1. I didn't chase after Gaara, I was chasing after Sasuke. 2. The bastard had already started fighting him before I got there. And 3. I won the fight with a headbutt. Now I have a question for you. Go ahead, she replied calmly. Can you get these inhibitors out? We had considered the operation of extracting them, but the danger factor was simply too great. One mistake in the surgery, and we risk damaging your tenketsu. We do that and you could very well lose the ability to use chakra permanently. He went still at those words. He had known Rock Lee. Thanks to him, the blonde knew that he could probably be a shinobi without chakra. But he had learned to harness his chakra and use it ever since he had taken that scroll. He practically fought it during those early years to control and use it right. His chakra was a part of him, just like his tenets. To face the idea that he might lose it permanently was truly terrifying. Still, he had to ask. What would my odds be if I took the surgery? Commander, I don't think that this is going to be something your infamous luck will be able to handle, Jacob told him. What would be my odds? He repeated himself. You would have less than a 20% chance of success, Miranda said shortly and abruptly. In fact, giving you a 10% chance would be generous. Oh. What else could he say? Could we get back to the questions now? Sure, thank you. I would like to discuss Vermeer, where you destroyed Saren's cloning facility. His face grew hard. What about it? You were forced to leave one of your squadmates behind in the blast. He didn't growl, nor did he show teeth. But the expression on his face warned her to tread lightly. Don't start talking about Caden. He was a good man who didn't deserve what happened to him. And I thought I left behind 2 squadmates on Vermeer. If she had anything to say about Quan Misley or what happened period, she didn't say a word. She stayed calm, which irritated him. Good enough for you, Miranda? Jacob asked the down-under woman, looking at her and ignoring him. I have 2 more questions, she answered. You always do, he said with a roll of his eyes. Thank you, Jacob, but not needed now. Now, Commander, she said, turning attention once again back to Naruto, think back to the Citadel, after the Alliance saved the Destiny Ascension and you killed Saren. What happened next? The Council decided to wise up and offer us a spot with them. They asked me for a recommendation and I chose Udina, he answered. Why? Jacob asked. We have reports about you were good friends with Commander Anderson. You could have made him the counselor for the Alliance. Why didn't you? He wouldn't have been a good one. He's a soldier, not a politician. Udina, on the other hand, is a politician and a damn good one. Alright, we've managed to confirm that you are Naruto Uzumaki. It's nice to see that I've managed to make you believe that I'm not a fake one, he said with acidic sarcasm. She ignored it all. There's just one more question that needs to be asked. Before waking up in that base, what's the last thing you remember? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he searched his mind and his memories, trying to remember what had happened to him before waking up. As it started to come to him, he began talking. Flashback. Come on, you have got to be cheating. Geras protested as Naruto won another hand. They were all sitting at the mess table playing a card game, the 2 of them along with Liara and Maya, who, despite being in obvious love, played hard against one another, Ashley, Tali, and a couple members of the crew who were off duty. If I was cheating, I would be cheating so well that you wouldn't notice, Geras, he replied while Tali cut the deck. The Turian scoffed. Yeah, right, it's the truth. I don't believe you, I'm a shinobi. I could make it happen. How about we just play the game here? One of the crew members asked. Sir, he added as an afterthought to Naruto. Yeah, I need a chance to win back my credits. Tali agreed as she started passing out the cards with a flick of her wrists. The gun training she did with Naruto was doing wonders to her dexterity. We all need a chance to win back our credits, Geras told her. Especially from this cheater right here, he declared, pointing a talon at Naruto. Hey, I've never cheated at gambling games, he said in protest. Fighting, yes, but never gambling? I've never really tried to cheat at gambling games. I've never needed to. We know. They've written stories about you and your luck, Ashley said as she took her cards. She was one of the few able to win a round against him. Most of them are for humor and aren't meant to be taken seriously. Personally, she found those stories to always be a good source for a laugh. Really? He asked as he took his own cards. Yeah, really? Her eyes flickered up at him, and then down at her cards again. Sir, permission to ask a question, another of the off-duty crew members asked him. He was a fresh-faced guy from Midgard called Arnst, having joined the crew after the Citadel. You're off-duty, Jenin, he replied. There's no need to be formal. The crewman nodded in acknowledgement. What's the question? What exactly are we doing out here in the border space between the Attican Traverse and the Terminus system? He paused as he reached for a card, only to resume the movement again. Why do you think we're doing here in the border space between the Attican Traverse and the Terminus system? He asked back. There's no need to be cute about it, Commander, Maya told him as she took a card. She raised the pot, making one of the crew members grumble and fold. What you call cute, I call a tactic for stalling. Really? She asked. How's that working out? Considering that we're talking about the tactic and not the question, I'd say very well. Jiraiya often told me to, and I quote, use the cute. The 9 Biju sniggered as he traded in 2 cards and raised the pot. Damn it, I fold, Geras said with a frown, tossing in his cards. Same, Maya said. I'll call, Ashley said, adding in her credits. I'll call too, Tali decided. I am out, Liara said, folding her cards gracefully. As the rest of the off-duty crew folded, leaving only 3 remaining, Ashley looked over at her commander. So, should you tell them why we're here or shall I? You're no fun, Ash, he told her with a smile. I'm tons of fun. You just don't pay attention. Is it just me or did she just hit on him? Shikaka asked. It's just you, Naruto replied. Are you sure? Yes, Commander? Ashley said, getting his attention again. Should you tell them, or shall I? Don't worry about it, he said. I'll tell them. Glad to hear it, sir. And I call. Same, Tali said. Same, he said as well. So what are we doing out here, sir? Ernst asked the blonde again, more interested in the answer than the game. Then again, he had already folded. We are out here, Genin, because the council has decided that since I was the one who dealt the final blow to Saren and ended his little rebellion, I was the best person to track down and find where the remaining Geth had gone to. But isn't that grunt work? Naruto gave him an amused look. What do you think we are? But you're a specter, the first human specter. And Naruto Uzumaki too, he insisted. He had read his shinobi history as a kid and, like many others, was in awe of the human specter. Before he could answer, Ashley did. He forgot to mention that he insulted the council when meeting with them after Saren's attack on the Citadel, and then refusing orders on Omega. She threw a sidelong glance at both Tali and Naruto. When Tali saw the number being raised again, she tossed her hand in, knowing that she wouldn't able to win that kind of pot. You fold, Tali? Liara asked her. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? She asked back. It was done to the last two players of the round, Naruto and Ashley. Everyone was silent as the two of them eyed one another. So, you want to fold? Ash asked her commander as she raised the pot. You're surprisingly generous, he remarked as he matched her raise and then raised it a bit higher. You either much have a good hand or not. Wouldn't you like to know? She asked with a smile as she met his raise. I don't have to, he replied with a mysterious smirk, raising the bet once more. So you think you have a better hand? She asked as she met the bet again. Perhaps, he replied, still being mysterious. She looked up at him and stared into his eyes. You're bluffing. She knew the hand that she had was a little weak but good. However, there was a good chance that he had a hand that was weaker than hers. The problem lay in the fact that his face gave nothing away. He had glanced at his cards twice, once when getting them and once again when getting new cards. Now, he kept his eyes on the people at the table. The fact he could shuffle his cards without really looking at them threw some of them off. That was a skill no one could never do so well. I learned a lot of things from Jiraiya, he had answered cryptically when asked about it. Am I? He asked her, still smirking. You have to be. She could see the cards the others had tossed down when they folded. That could only mean he had a weak hand. Are you willing to bet on that? He has to be bluffing. He has to be. But the way himself, utterly neutral but confident, just told her that wasn't the case. He kept raising the pot too. Not a lot, but enough to keep it going. He had been playing like this throughout the entire game. The only times he had lost was when he folded, but he hadn't folded now and they were the only two left playing. He must have a good hand. No, I'm not, she finally declared, laying her cards down for all to see. I fold. And the commander wins again, Maya remarked drily as Naruto took the money. She leaned over to look at Ash's cards. Really, Ash, you were going to try and beat him with that hand? It's a good hand, she protested. It's a weak hand. No kidding, Tali said as she looked at it. I had a better one. Then why did you stop? Ash asked her. I thought you both had better ones, plus the money was getting too high for me to risk it. Why did you? Because I thought that I would be able to bluff him into folding. It's a weak hand, Naruto admitted to all. But it's still a better one than I've got. Everyone swung their heads at him when he said those words. What? They all asked in unison. Very impressive. Did you practice that? He asked with an amused look. They were still waiting to see what he was talking about, so he just dropped his hand onto the table for everyone to see. As they gazed at the cards, Liara was the first one to voice what they were all thinking. Son of a bitch. She swore. I'll be damned, Maya said. Knew it, I knew it, Gurus grumbled. Ashley just stared the hand. Naruto had nothing at all in that hand. Yet he had acted like he had something in that hand, enough to make them all fold. Damn, she finally said, looking up at him. You're good, sir, thank you. You're not a bad bullshitter yourself. Sir, are we going to see any action out here? Ernst asked him. Why? He asked back. Are you that interested in fighting? Sir, Ernst is an FNG, Edna, another crewmate, told him. Her voice had a bit of lilt to it, which made sense due to her being a Fianna clanswoman. FNG? He repeated, slightly confused. Fucking new guy, she explained. This is his first posting. He's got the evening watch, or whatever qualifies as evening watch out here in space. Stavros, the third crewmate, grumbled as he idly scratched his bald head. Realization dawned on Naruto's face at the explanation. Oh, so he's full of... Confusion replaced the realization as he tried to think of the phrase he was looking for. What was that phrase you told me about, ash, piss and vinegar? She asked. He snapped his fingers. That's it. Thanks. That's a weird phrase, Saiken remarked. Kinda catchy though, Matatabi said in reply. No, not really, the slug said with a shake of its head. More like off-putting. I'm going to have to agree with Matatabi on this one, Gyuki said, joining in the argument. It is rather catchy. How in the name of the sage is something like that catchy? Isabu asked the Hachibi. It sounds like someone is trying to go to the bathroom for a bad medical condition. Does that say EW to anyone else? Nope, just you, Shikaka told him with a snigger. What did you call FNGs in your day, Commander? Edna asked the blonde. She must have guessed that the term didn't exist back then, which was odd for her because she had been serving for quite some time and the term had been applied to her once. Then again, she was talking about him. Virgins, he answered with a straight face while he ignored the tenants in his head. Everyone else at the table stared at him. No, really, what did you call them? She asked again. They were called virgins, sometimes even cherries. That second one makes a lot more sense, Gurus said. The first is just plain old ridiculous. Finally, someone who agrees with what I've been saying, Kurama remarked. You have to admit that the phrase was weird even back then. I admit to nothing, Fox, he replied. That's because you've used it on new recruits who had never seen a battle before. That's kinda the point. What do you call someone who hasn't slept with a woman and not been in battle before? Stavros asked him. Probably the same thing as before, Gurus remarked. Close enough, Naruto acknowledged. We used to call those particular people squared virgins, but the name was quickly dropped. Why? Edna asked. As the war went on, we cared more about whether or not a person could fight rather than if they slept with anyone. That's not true, Kurama protested. There were quite a few people that cared about whether someone slept with someone or not. Or to be more precise, they cared about whether or not you slept with someone, Shikaku added. Yes, thank you, Shikaku. I got that point right away. There wasn't any need to drive it in. Not wanting to continue the conversation with the Biju, he looked over at the FNG. Don't worry, kid. You'll a chance to fight soon. For now, just thank whatever god you pray to that you got a light tour of duty. But... He trailed off. But? Repeated Naruto. Come on, talk to me. Won't it be a pain to go back and forth to safe systems to restock and resupply before coming out here? At that, he laughed. Where have you been? We haven't been going to safe systems to resupply. We've been going to Omega. He laughed even harder when he saw the FNG's eyes all but bugged out of his head at those words. But that's the heart of the Terminus system. Sir, with all due respect, why the hell would we go there to resupply? The laughter vanished as the blonde stared him down. Kid, you need some experience in warfare and fighting before you can even think of whipping out with all due respect on me. The FNG closed his mouth quicker than anyone could blink while Edna and Stavros just shook their heads. He was too fresh, too green, to be talking like that to his commanding officer. It was liable to get him into trouble, and it almost did. They had seen other FNGs get chewed out by their commanding officers for talking like that, and then making them do humiliating jobs. This kid was just lucky he was getting a warning. Then again, it was a warning from Naruto Uzumaki, something that shouldn't be taken lightly. Aye, sir, he finally said. The hardness in the Spectre's eyes vanished. We go to Omega because it's closer and therefore easier to restock and resupply and also to gather information on possible Geth location. While he didn't make it sound like he was explaining something to an idiot, there was a chastising tone to it. Plus, it's also a chance for you to sleep with the Pirate Queen of Omega, Gurus remarked dryly. He looked at the Turian with a smirk. Is that jealousy I hear in your voice, Gurus? Or is it still Odd Wonder? Shut up. Odd Wonder it is then. This time, Arnst's eyes were practically out of their sockets. Sir, you're sleeping with Arya Cloak. Oh, you've heard of her? He asked with feigned surprise. Who hasn't? Ease up, kid, Tali told him. He's just playing around with you. She threw Naruto a look at that. Don't give me that look, Tali, the blonde told her. Despite what you might think, I don't go to Arya just for the sex, as good as that is. We do other things too. There was no trace of belief in her voice. We do. I am not a sex toy. If I was, Arya wouldn't keep letting me into her private suite. She calls me her personal stress reliever, so sometimes we don't have sex. But it was mostly sex. What else do you do? Maya asked. Whatever will make her relax, he answered. Sometimes it's sex, sometimes it's a drinking companion, which can lead to sex, and sometimes it's just watching whatever is playing. We once did a shinobi marathon, going through the first 5 seasons while the Normandy was at shore. That explains where you were for 4 days, Liara remarked. That had been the longest time he had disappeared on Omega. They had started considering invading the space station again because of that. And the last time we were at Omega, I took her out on a date. If people had been drinking, that would have been the moment they all did spit takes. But since their glasses lay untouched on the table, no such thing happened. Didn't mean they were any less surprised. You took the Pirate Queen of Omega out on a date? Gurus repeated, making sure he hadn't lost his hearing. Yeah, he answered. You took the Pirate Queen of Omega out on a date? I believe I said that, yes. He looked at the rest of the table. Can anyone else see the wrongness of that sentence? Now the blonde was offended. What is wrong with it? The fact that I had to use the phrases Pirate Queen of Omega and out on a date in the same sentence. Okay, that was just uncalled for. Weren't we playing cards? Stavros remarked audibly from where he sat with his chin resting on his palm. As much fun as this was, he was here to play. Yeah, I think we were, Tali replied. As they settled for the next round, they were interrupted. Hey, Commander, could I get you up here? Joker called out over the intercom. Sure, Joker, I'm coming up, Naruto replied, getting up from his seat and grabbing his Spectre coat. Oh good, now we'll have a chance to win, Maya said as he walked away. I heard that. He shouted back. You were supposed to. She shouted in return. He couldn't help but laugh as he made his way up to the command deck. So what do you need me for, Joker? He said aloud. We've got a ship off our starboard bow. He frowned in confusion. There are stars all around us. We're in space, he said, making it sound like it was the most obvious thing, which, to him, it was. Starboard means right, sir. Then why didn't you just say that? We've got a ship off to our right. Even over the intercom, the blonde could hear the sarcasm in his pilot's voice. His name was well earned. There. Was that so hard? You're not a nautical kind of guy, are you, Commander? I'm a shinobi. Do we know what kind of ship it is? It's hailing us on a council frequency, but it doesn't look like any council ship I've ever seen. And how many have you seen, Joker? He asked with good humor as he entered the command deck. Practically all of them, his pilot answered. He felt a sense of unease at those words. He trusted Joker, and if the man had seen all the different kinds of ships the council had but had not seen this one, that meant either it was a new one or a secret one. And the second one didn't usually offer good news for anyone. What does it look like? Like a Solarian, a Turian, and an Asari got together and decided to make a ship. I'm being serious here, Joker, he said as he started making his way towards the cockpit. Hey, so am I, Commander. That is honestly the best answer I can give you. It looks like a Solarian, Turian, and Asari ship all mixed in together. I'm still trying to figure out if it's fugly or just plain ugly. There's a difference? To people who have standards? Yes. What do they want? He asked as he passed the galactic map, returning the saluting he was given. He had tried telling everyone he was an easygoing guy who didn't need to be saluted every 5 seconds, but they kept doing it. In the end, he just gave up and let them. They just keep sending us one question. Is Commander Naruto Uzumaki aboard? I don't think you should answer, Shikaka told his Jinchuriki. And why not? He asked back. I don't know, but I've got a bad feeling about it. You should probably not answer. Having a bad feeling isn't really credible, Shikaku, Isaba told the Ichibi. Yeah, especially with you after that food incident 2 months ago, Saiken added. That doesn't matter here. I'm just saying that he shouldn't answer. Hell, he should probably run. Why would I do that when I don't even know what they want? Naruto asked the Tanuki. He didn't receive an answer by the time he got to the cockpit, clapping a gentle hand on Joker's shoulder. Ask them what they want. I already did that. They keep sending the same question. Joker flipped the communication channel open. Hello, all you wonderful aliens. How are all you doing on this very fine day? I'm doing swell, just to let you know. Talk about laying the sarcasm a bit thick, Koko commented. Well, it is Joker, Chome said in reply. Good point, the Gobi conceded. The communication channel had no screens so they could not see who was talking. But they could hear the voice. It was male, which ruled out an Asari, and the fact that it was neither high-pitched nor fast-going meant it wasn't a Solarian. So if it was a council ship, that meant a Turian was talking. Is Commander Naruto Uzumaki on your ship? It asked. Joker closed the channel. See? He asked, looking at Naruto. Yeah, I do. How long has he been asking that question? Ever since I received the line, he answered. As you can see, I've already started a conversation with him, but he just does not want to talk about anything. Perhaps you were laying the sarcasm on a little thick, Joker? That's what I said. Koko said, perking up when he heard his words being repeated. I know you said that. I heard you say that, Naruto said back. Still, it's nice to hear you listen. Hear me listen? When haven't I listened to you guys? Remember where exactly you are living right now. We know that, Gaki. You don't need to remind us, Kurama told him. What do you want me to do, Commander? Joker asked him. Continue trying to irritate the hell out of this guy and see if it works. Please let him do it. We need the entertainment, Sun said. I'm telling you, you shouldn't answer, Shikaka said, his voice pleading. Joker, open the channel again, the blonde ordered his pilot. Aye, Commander, Joker said, doing as he was told. When the channel was opened, he leaned forward and started speaking. This is Commander Naruto Uzumaki. Who are you and what do you want? The channel died abruptly. What the? Was that you, Joker? No, that wasn't me, he replied. It looks like they closed it from the other side. Why would they do that? They were the ones who were asking the Ks. Oh shit! He suddenly pulled the controls back and the ship jerked up. The move was so suddenly that crew members walking suddenly fell to the floor, sending the command deck up into a chorus of surprised shouts and cruzzes, mostly directed at the pilot. Naruto fell to one knee and quickly got back up. What the hell, Joker? He demanded. They were opening fire on us, his pilot answered. Saints help me, they're doing it again. Hold on. He moved the ship into an evasive maneuver that pulled it out of the way. Naruto saw the missile fly across the window, right through the ship was only a few seconds ago. While still steering the ship, Joker opened the intercom to the ship. Red alert! Red alert! All hands, man battle stations. I repeat, all hands, man battle stations. We are under attack. The siren klaxon started ringing and everyone was racing to their stations. The information soon started flowing into the cockpit and into the pilots' and commanders' ears. Kinetic shields are up, mass accelerator cannon warming up to fire, torpedoes ready to launch, Guardian at the ready, enemy ship turning about. It's on an intercept trajectory. I've got weapon readings from enemy ship. They're readying to fire again. Alright, fucker, let's dance, Joker said, readying his hands at the controls. Fire on my ship, will you? I don't think so. What's the plan, Joker? Naruto asked him. The plan is for me to deal with this guy and for you to stand there and look pretty. Now shut up and let me do my job. Ouch, Gyuki remarked. See, I told you I had a bad feeling. Shikaka said. Not now. The rest of the Biju told him. Enemy ship is firing missiles. Inbound at 15 seconds. Guardian weapons have a lock. Firing. A subtle whump rippled through the ship, making everyone feel it in their feet. Missiles have been intercepted. Time to get in closer, the Normandy's pilot said. He flew the ship towards the enemy, bearing down on it like a bull charging. Missiles firing again, this time in volleys. An enemy mass accelerator cannon has been sighted. They're opening fire. Brace for evasive maneuvers. Joker shouted into the comm, suddenly throwing the Normandy downwards. Naruto could only grab the pilot's chair at the sudden move to prevent himself from being thrown. The whole ship shook with two thudding vibrations. Report! Shouted Joker, the lights flashing all around him. A few missiles managed to strike us on the rear, but the shields are holding, Presley announced from his chair. He leveled the Normandy out. How far from the enemy ship? 30 seconds away. Have the torpedoes ready to fire on my mark. Aye, sir. Weapons deck, ready torpedoes. An ensign shouted into her comm. 20 seconds. The ship was getting closer in sight. Enemy ship realigning itself. 10 seconds, just a little closer. Joker muttered. 5 seconds, fire torpedoes. He ordered as the enemy ship got close enough. Fire torpedoes. The weapons ensign repeated. Torpedoes away. Naruto watched as the torpedoes launched themselves at the ship. It tried veering away but was still struck in the side. Direct hit, announced Presley as they flew past the enemy ship. Their kinetic shields are disrupted. Bringing her around, said Joker. Engage the mass accelerator cannon. Engaging cannon. He brought the ship around in a wide arc so they could face the enemy again. Open fire. The whole ship shuddered as the cannon fired. But as it sailed through the darkness that was space and struck the enemy ship, it just washed over it with a wave of blue energy that was obviously their shields. And it didn't help their confidence when they saw the shield fading just as quickly as it had appeared, like a hand going away after flicking off an ant. What in the name of the earthly saints? Said Joker. I thought that the shields were disrupted. They were, Presley told him. They must have recovered. Bullshit. No shield can recover that fast. Enemy's mass accelerator cannon firing. It's also firing torpedoes. At this distance? Asked Naruto. He had learned a torpedo would only work in close range, otherwise the Guardian would be able to take them out. Brace for impact. Joker screamed as he saw the mass-accelerated slug come flying, knowing it would be too late to try and outmaneuver it. The whole ship rocked with the explosion, the sound deafening ears. Even Naruto fell to the ground, his seeing double of everything. He shook his head to clear it and got back up. What's the damage? The shields are down, and we've got no less than 3 fires on multiple decks. Joker answered. I thought a mass accelerator slug couldn't take the shields out in one hit. They can't. It should be impossible. The ship shook with additional explosions, knocking people down again. What the hell was that? Presley? Shouted Joker. He didn't get an answer. Presley's dead. An ensign shouted back up to them both. Those 2 words reverberated inside their ears. Despite the battle's chaos, Naruto and Joker both turned their heads to look. Presley was lying twisted on the walkway, his face half burned. One of the explosions must have been right in front of him, killing him instantly. It was a blessing, if one could call it that. Normally, they would have given him a moment of silence. But silence was the last thing on their minds. Somebody give me a report. Joker roared from his seat, still flying the Normandy. Were we hit by torpedoes? No, sir. An ensign replied, having taken over Presley's seat. Then what the hell were we hit with? It looks like we were hit with some kind of boarding shuttles. Both Joker and Naruto shared a look at that. Boarding shuttles were supposed to be simply shuttles able to get in close, hijack an enemy ship's hangar door to open, and let the soldiers inside get off. But boarding shuttles that were the size and speed of a torpedo, shields able to replenish themselves so quickly after being struck by 2 torpedoes? A mass-accelerated slug able to knock their own shields down to low numbers and still inflict damage on the ship? What the hell kind of ship were they up against? Sir, I'm getting reports of enemies inside the ship. They're pouring out of the torpedoes. Where? Demanded Joker. Everywhere, was the answer. Commander, the pilot shouted. I'm going. Naruto shouted back, already turning around and pulling out his guns. Don't shoot up my ship. Good point. He put the pistols away and pulling out a kunai instead. There, less chance of danger. Thank you. Naruto stopped at the ensign's station. Where are they? He demanded. Everywhere, the ensign repeated. I need details. Another explosion rocked the ship. He felt that one in his bones as his knee bashed against the back of the chair. Gah, fuck! He cursed at the pain, losing his grip on one of the kunai, dropping it to the ground. Suck it up! Kurama barked at him. He did so, focusing on the ensign. What was that? It was another boarding shuttle. Here, on the command deck, already he could hear rapid moving and gunfire. Screams and shouts of pain were briefly heard before being silenced. That's my crew. They're murdering my crew! Anger coursed through his body, turning his vision red and hazy. He turned back to the walkway and charged straight for the sounds of gunfire, extending his free hand out and channeling his chakra to form a Rasengan. His eyes came alight with the Rinnegan, clearing out the haze. His appearance before the enemy was sudden and swift. The first he met was decapitated with a single swing, the second had its chest caved in from the Rasengan, and the third got the kunai right in the forehead. And that was only in the first 3 seconds. After that, the enemy noticed him. There he is! Set weapons to stun! They want him! In the split second they were switching to stun rounds, he acted, rising up his hands thrusting them out like claws. Shinra Tensei! He snarled. The shockwave sent them flying back, landing hard against sharp edges. Bones were audibly broken and once they slumped down, they stayed down. Get that thing out! Someone shouted. He looked at who had spoken, a Midgardian with sergeant stripes who was pointing at the boarding shuttle. Crew members began rushing towards. Stop! He shouted instantly. They did as they were told but they looked to him with confusion in their eyes. Sir, we need to get that thing out. The sergeant told him. Use your head, man. You try getting that thing out of the ship, you'll be sucked out after it. Just leave it there. Enemies coming up the stairs. An ensign shouted. All eyes turned to see a Turian and an Asari come charging up the steps, guns in hand. Sir, grenade! The sergeant shouted, tossing Naruto said grenade. He snatched it out of the air, pulled the pin, and threw it down the stairs closest to him, while the sergeant did the same on the other side. The grenades bounced down the steps, right between the alien's legs. They wouldn't be caught in the blast, not if he had anything to say about it. Shinra Tensei! They fell back down the stairs from the shockwave, just in time to be exploded. He felt very satisfied as the explosion's wave washed over him. When the explosion was said and done, he moved down the stairs. The gunfire and shouting were getting out louder and louder as he approached the door. When it opened, he found himself standing on the wrong side of a pitched gunfight. The mess table had been told over and was being for protection for his crew and his team. Are you just going to stand there? Kurama demanded. No. He pulled his guns free and opened fire. Joker would probably yell at him later. That was later. He heard the squawks of surprise from the enemy, and he enjoyed them. What the? A Turian asked before getting his shields depleted and shot to death. Who's shooting at us? Behind us. An Asari shouted. By then, it was too late. While Naruto had been shooting at them, causing a small amount of confusion, he also moved towards them, getting into striking distance. When he was amongst them, he flipped his pistols up in the air, grabbed them by the barrels, and began unleashing what he had taught himself upon. They felt to him like wheat to the sickle, having no chance against his surprise and his guns. His joining the fight changed the tide of it. His crew was no longer pinned down. They stood up and helped finish the fight. Nice to have you around, mate, Maya said, pointing her rifle upwards once the fighting was done. Beside her were Gurus and Tali. Get down to the other areas of fighting and aid the crew, he ordered. As he spoke, he noticed something on one of the aliens' armor, a small speck of black against the white. It was a black triangle. The tribe, he thought with a decisive tone. You want any prisoners? Gurus asked him as he readied his rifle. None at all, he replied, standing back up. Another shockwave rattled the entire ship, making them all fall to the ground, like trees falling to axes. As they all got back up, all they heard were more explosions. It was like the whole ship had been turned into an inferno. The lights turned red. Fire and dead people were everywhere. Those who were still alive were running and shouting, either trying to make sense of the chaos or just adding to it all. Screams of confusion, of pain, of fear, all just mixed together into a chaotic blend that hammered away at the ears. For the veterans on the ship, it was something even worse, especially a veteran well over 2,000 years old. No, Naruto thought as he looked at the village being burned down around him. It was all he could see. The only thing that he could hear was the screams. His heart began to beat faster, and his breathing became more ragged. No, 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 no. Naruto, snap out of it! Kurama roared. It was so loud and sudden, he jumped in shock. But it worked. It was like a slap to his senses, bringing him back to reality. The burning village vanished and he found himself back on the ship, the same ship that was still burning in multiple places with a shrill warning klaxon going off in his ear. Thanks, he mentally told the Biju. Thank me later when your ship isn't on its last legs. Sir! He heard Ashley's voice cut through the chaotic noise embedded in the ship. As he stood back up, he felt a hand on his shoulder, helping him stand. Are you all right? She asked him. I'm fine, he said loudly to get over the noise. Attention, this is Joker. The Normandy's pilot shouted over the intercom. Everyone, abandon ship. I repeat, everyone, abandon ship. The Normandy distress beacon has been launched, but the ship is minutes away from destruction. Abandon ship. He might have continued, if the intercom didn't decide to die at that point with a small explosion of its own. Sir, what do we do? Ashley asked him. Everyone nearby looked to him for guidance. You heard the man. He shouted at them. Abandon ship. They all started running towards the nearest escape pod. Ash, you go too. Sir, Joker is still in the cockpit. I'll get him. Now go. She stiffened slightly and threw a salute. She disappeared, going to help the others get onto the escape pods. He turned back around and went back the way he came, taking the stairs two at a time. As he ran, he could hear Joker speaking. It was faint but grew louder. Ide, Mayday. This is SSV Normandy. We've suffered heavy damage from an unknown enemy. Joker! He shouted through the smoke and fire. The command deck looked different now, even though it had looked normal only a few minutes ago. It was amazing how quickly things could go to shit. Come on, baby. Hold together. Hold together. There was a loud groaning noise. The blonde looked up to see where it was coming from. He watched in shock as the ceiling began to tear itself off the ship. Shit! He swore as he channeled his chakra around his mouth to act as a rebreather. Get moving! Kurama ordered. I know! He kept running towards the cockpit, seeing a barrier surrounding the entrance. Joker must have heard the sound just like he had and protected himself. Passing through the barrier felt like going through water, a brief cold wet feeling. Joker, we need to go, he said to his pilot, grabbing hold of his shoulder. The glass in front of them now had metal plating over it, little good that it did, but Joker wasn't moving. No! I won't abandon the Normandy. I can still save her, he protested, keeping his eyes on his controls. His commander wasn't going to have any of it. Can we take it, Joker? You're the one who called it. The Normandy is going down and everyone has to abandon ship. You're not excluded. Get your ass moving. He didn't wait for a response and pulled him out of the seat. Oh. Watch the shoulder. No time. We have to go. He pulled Joker's arm over his shoulder to help him stand together. They left the cockpit. There was one escape pod left, right next to the airlock. They could get out that way. But at the pace they were going, it was taking too long. The ship was blowing up all around them. They couldn't go 2 seconds without hearing something exploding, and the ceiling wasn't the only thing tearing itself apart. One such explosion knocked them apart just as they reached the hatch to the escape pod, sending Joker down and Naruto back. Pain blossomed for a moment in Naruto's back and then disappeared as he stood back up. Joker stood at the hatch. Commander, come on! He shouted. He started forward, only to stop as an explosion flashed across the front of his face, blinding him momentarily. When his sight came back, he saw that the ship was on its last legs. In a few moments, it would splinter apart. Gravity was already weakening. It would take too long for him to reach the hatch safely, but that didn't mean Joker couldn't get out. Sorry about this, Joker, he said before raising his hand. Shinra Tensei, the force of the jutsu pushed his pilot into the escape pod, sending him all the way back. Ow! He cried as he landed. He got back up and hobbled forward again. Commander, what are you doing? Making sure you get out. He reached out and found the outside controls for the pod. Don't worry, I'll get out, but the ship is falling about. Despite the incredible danger he was in, he smiled. Hey, it's me we're talking about here. I'll see you around. With a single-fisted motion, he hit the controls. Nero! Joker started to shout, only to be caught off by the escape pod closing on him. And away he goes, Kurama said. Now how do you plan on getting out of here, you moron? I'm fairly certain that was the last escape pod. There's always another way out, he replied. Off a ship exploding into pieces in the middle of space? I don't think so. Another explosion, far louder than before, knocked him to the ground. Speaking of said ship, that was it splitting in half. The fox added, I can see that. Already he was beginning to lose his grip on gravity, his feet floating up from the floor. Air was getting weaker. If he was going to stay here, he would die, but he did have an idea on how to get out. It was stupid beyond belief and risky as all hell. He had read his history, and he had no idea what kind of welcoming committee he would get, if one at all. He could very be killed on arrival. But he was not going to get killed from this. Using what remaining grip he had on the floor, he pushed off to the nearest wall, half of which was covered in flame. With an old, practiced motion he hadn't done in the longest time, he bit his thumb, folded his hands into the necessary seals, and placed them on the wall. Gyakukuchio's jutsu, reverse summoning jutsu, and flashback. The next thing I knew, he told Miranda and Jacob, I was waking up in that water-filled cell. It corresponds to what the other survivors have reported, Jacob said, thinking over what he had just heard. Miranda was more focused on the details. Commander, are you sure that it was the tribe that attacked the Normandy? She asked him. I know that symbol anywhere. It was how I knew I was in trouble back on that base. Awooga, awooga, awooga. The red lights suddenly flashing was enough to tell him that the base was in danger, but the distinctive sound of the siren made him pause. Is that really the sound of the alarm? He asked the two people on the other side of the table. Both stood up, alert and ready. What's happening? Miranda asked out loud, looking up at one of the walls. It's the tribe, ma'am. They found the base. A voice replied, but not over any obvious intercoms. Shit! Jacob swore as he looked at his partner. We need to get him out of here. Of course we do, she replied, as cool and calm as ever. Commander, please follow us. Naruto eyed her wearily. Do I have a choice? Do you wish to be chained up and treated like a lab rat again? Her voice remained the same, but he knew she was being sarcastic. No. Awooga, 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 awooga. He glared up at the ceiling. That has seriously got to be the stupidest sounding alarm I have ever heard, he declared as he followed them to the door. Why does it sound like that? Getting a good alarm sound wasn't high up on the budget priorities, Miranda told him. The door opened. Quan Misley was standing on the other side. What's coming at us? Jacob asked her as they all walked out of the room and down the corridor. People were running past them in the opposite direction, guns out and ready to use. A company of ships protecting a single one, she answered, matching their brisk pace. They're drawing the base's defenses so the one can get in close. We'll need to get out and regroup, Miranda decided. We have a base at a nearby colony. We'll go there. Get the ship ready, Jacob ordered the ex-hunter. Already did, she answered. What about the equipment? Miranda asked. We've spent too much time working on it to abandon it now. Relax, I've already sent it aboard. She figured the brunette would worry about the equipment. She's thorough, always has been, Naruto remarked shortly. It was the only thing he said about his former teammate. As they kept walking down and through the corridors, with that damn annoying klaxon ringing in their ears, a voice spoke over the intercom. Enemy ship is forcibly docking. All hands take stalling positions. Wait, stall? The blonde said, turning back to look. There was no one else but them now in the corridor. What are they doing? Giving us enough time to get out through the back door, so to speak, Miranda said. There's nothing you can do about it, Commander. He knew that, but that didn't mean he had to like it. So he settled for a scowl as they entered another docking bay. He didn't know what kind of a ship it was they were approaching, just that it was small enough to dock inside the base but large enough to be more than some kind of shuttle. Once they were inside, the doors closed and the ship lifted up from its holdings. Where are we going? Naruto asked as they sat down. There was a small corridor to the front and to the back. There weren't any windows for him to see what was going on back at the base. As we've said before, to another base to regroup, Miranda told him. This one is based around a colony called Freedom's Progress. It shouldn't take us long to get there, Quan Misley said as she went to the cockpit. Are you planning on driving? He called out after her. She didn't answer, nor did she stop. He looked back at the others. So, how long is it going to be until we get there? A few hours, Jacob answered. It'll give us enough time to get you up to date. Up to date on what? He asked with a slightly confused look in his eyes. If you'll follow me, Commander, he said, standing up from his seat and heading towards the back. The blonde followed him into the back, which was a small arsenal. There were plenty of guns and rifles on the walls and tables. But those weren't the only things on the table. He saw blocks lying on the tables as well. Judging from the holes in some of the guns, those blocks were somehow a part of them. What's with all the weapons? He asked Jacob. We have to get you up to date, Commander, the man repeated. I know how to handle a gun. I was taught how to handle one before they sent me out into the universe. That may be, sir. But things have changed in the past 2 years. Things had changed in the past 2,000 years for me, he said archly. You'll notice by the fact that I am no longer surprised that we're flying on a ship in the middle of space and are nowhere near Earth. The Akatsuki member didn't bat an eyelash at his sarcasm. Sir, please just pay attention. This is important. He might have restrained the urge if it had been any other time, but he was still getting used to the fact that he would be working with the Akatsuki. So he rolled his eyes with great obviousness. Alright, so what's happened in the past 2 years? When it comes to weaponry, that is, he added as an afterthought, not wanting to walk into a joke. Well, for one, the means to vent waste heat has been completely changed by something the Geth have come with. Jacob began to explain. Wait, we're using something that the Geth came up with? After seeing it in use, the council thought that it was the thing they needed and ordered research into making it. I heard rumors that they even bought some from the Shadow Broker. Okay, now he was curious. What is this thing? This, he said, holding up one of the blocks. Naruto took it and looked it over carefully, noticing that it fit in the palm of his hand. He might have said that it was round in appearance, but it had faces and edges. There was probably a name for the exact shape that it was, but he didn't know what it was, so why bother? There was red light highlighting the casing, bright enough to make him notice but not bright enough to distract him. As he held it, he could feel its warmth in his hand. What is it? A thermal clip, Jacob told him. It's a detachable heat sink that can be taken out of a weapon once it reaches maximum heat waste. If a solider knows how to handle them, they can swap out clips in a matter of seconds. So now there's no danger of the guns overheating in the middle and being forced into cover while you wait. That's genius, he said, amazed. What would Shikamaru think of something like this? He knew that lazy Nara would be impressed. Then he would take it and make it his own while also coming up with new strategies incorporating it. But as he looked at the clip, he also went over Jacob's words. Hang on, he said, putting the clip down. You said the council went for this. The Alliance didn't? At that, Jacob smiled. We took it and did one better. He picked up another clip-like object, only this one was blockier than the thermal, looking more like a rectangle. The Alliance had been working on it for some time, but the introduction of the thermal clip gave us what we needed to finish it. What is it? It's a chakra clip. There was a good 2 to 3 seconds worth of pause before the blonde answered him. You mean to tell me that chakra can now be used in guns? Yes, it is. And in the 5 elements too, he added. Each does its own little kind of damage. Katon will make shots incendiary while Suiton will give them splash damage capabilities. Doton is the heavy hitter, capable of breaking bones even while being shielded. Raiton is the paralyzing one, able to shut down any enemy's shielding and nervous system. And Futon? Asked the blonde. The piercer, he answered. Anything it hits, it will come out the other end. He grinned, liking what he was hearing. How does it work? That was where Jacob's expression fell. It's a charging clip. All one would have to do is channel their chakra into the clip until it was full, and since Naruto couldn't even access his chakra, let alone channel it into anything, having a chakra clip didn't do anything for him. So why are you showing this to me in the first place? He asked, folding his arms across his chest and a scowl forming on his face. He felt like an Inuzuka hound being offered a treat, and it was taken away from him before he could even have a chance to taste it. We didn't know about the inhibitors, Commander, he reminded the blonde. Just think of this as something you'll be able to use. He just stared at the dark-skinned man for the longest time. The word you're forgetting is eventually. The look of embarrassment couldn't have been more obvious. Anyway, moving on, he said. He reached out for a machine gun and a thermal clip. We've modeled the chakra clip on how the thermal attaches and detaches from the weapon, so once you've figured out how to attach, you'll be able to do so for both. He just reached for a similar gun, mimicking his actions. Alright, now what? He asked. Jacob reached for a thermal clip and placed it in the gun socket, halfway between the trigger and the barrel end. He did in a second, ending it with a slap at the end. The red lightning turned blue. Naruto followed his actions again, but was more careful. He didn't slap it in but with more care. Don't worry, you'll get more used to it, Jacob told him as his clip turned blue as well. So once this thing reaches maximum heat waste, it's unusable. Alright, that left one question. How will I tell? The clips have been designed to be depleted after a certain amount of shots have been fired. Once that number is reached, it's done. Okay, but how will I tell? He asked again. He needed details. You see how it's blue now? That means it's usable. When it turns red, take it out. Okay, that makes sense. Is there any way to recharge the clips once they're wasted? Not in the middle of battle, not for the thermal ones anyway, Jacob told him. So, what do you want? He waved an arm at the arsenal. We've got plenty of weapons. Naruto looked at everything. There were enough weapons to supply a small army. There were even a few weapons he had never seen before, which, in hindsight, were quite a few things. But he was still an old-fashioned kind of guy. I don't suppose you guys have some kunai and shuriken? He asked. All he was seeing were guns, and more guns. We don't, sir, he answered, looking a little embarrassed. Here he was talking to a shinobi more than 2,000 years old, and he didn't have anything he was used to. Huh. He kept looking around at all the guns. Do you have a pair of Black Hawk's pistols? No, but we do have a pair of Warhawk's pistols. Hearing the phrase Warhawk made Naruto think of Danzo momentarily. There were times he was glad that man was dead. What's the difference? I'm used to handling Black Hawks. The Warhawk series is basically an updated version of the Black Hawk. It is a little heavier and bigger, but you'll be able to get off more shots for better damage, he answered as he turned and grabbed said pistols off a rack. The best feature is that it's been modified so that it can handle either thermal or chakra clips. The blonde looked at the guns presented to him. They were bigger than what he was used to. It was probably better to call them hand cannons than pistols. As he took them, he could feel the weight in his hands. They were definitely heavier than Black Hawks. There was an irregularity on the underside of the barrel, where a gap big enough to put his finger in was. I'm guessing this is where one of the clips goes in. He asked, putting one down and tapping the other with a free finger. Yes, the thermal. Then where does the chakra clip go? You see the uneven edge on the side? He did. It was small, only big enough for a fingernail to have a good grip on it. What of it? Pull it down. He did that. The uneven edge brought out a square tube that slid down the open area until it closed with click. The bottom of the grip opened with snap to reveal a slot into the grip, a slot that matched the shape of the chakra clip. I see. Now grab one of the edges and swing it close. The thermal clip slot opened up again. So I can only use one, not both. There had been some experiments of trying to use both when the thermal clip came out, Jacob said. The results, from what I heard, weren't pretty. Are you done back here? Miranda asked them both as she appeared at the door. Just about, Miranda, he told her. Good. She turned to look at Naruto. Commander, when you're done here, come back to the main section. There's something that we must get you ready in. Now he was confused and little interested in what she had to say. I'll be right behind you, he told her, picking up the other gun. Good. She turned around and walked away. He followed her. What is it that you need me for? He asked once they were outside the armory. Your armor, she told him, going towards the right side bulkhead, tapping away on her Omni tool as she walked. He paused mid-step. My what? I don't need armor. Commander, let's be honest here, she said without turning to look at him. Without your chakra, your ability to handle yourself in a modern-day firefight is severely curtailed. You're going to need every advantage you can get now. The last time I wore armor, it felt too bulky on me. And it was the lightest set they had. This time, she did look at him, with disdain. Commander, we're not them. We can do better. Her tapping stopped and the wall opened, revealing a suitcase on a shelf. She took it out and placed on the seat. Granted, some of its features can't be used because of your loss, but it's still something we have developed for 6 months and designed for you. 6 months and for me? He repeated. Why, we've been looking for you since you disappeared, she told him. But we didn't just wait for you to show up before developing weaponry and armor for you. He could see her point, both for that and the fact that he needed the advantages. All right, what do you have? She opened the case. This, she declared, pulling out what was inside and showing him what it was. It looked like a jumpsuit. Are you a fan of Rock Lee or something? He asked her. She rolled her eyes. Of course he'd think that. Feel it. He did as he was told. While it did feel smooth, it was not spandex as he had originally thought. There was some coarseness to it, probably for protection. Whatever it was, it went from neck to boot, along with sleeves and gloves. Okay, how do I put it on? He wasn't seeing anything that resembled a zipper anywhere on it. While most of the functions are chakra-based, we were smart enough to have the basics functions be DNA-based instead, just in case, she explained. While that's nice to know, that still doesn't tell me how to put it on. She offered him a knife. Cut your finger and let the blood fall on it. He reached out for the knife and hesitated for a moment. That question about his healing loomed over his head again. Would it work? Would it not? This was something he needed to be careful about. It's a cut on the finger, Naruto, the part of him that wasn't worrying about it told him. If it doesn't heal, you can put a bandage on it. He took the knife and cut his pinky finger. The blood welled up on the finger for a moment, as he held it over the suit. Then it fell in a leak that quickly stopped. When he looked at his pinky, it was already healing. Good, Miranda told him. Now strip and take hold of it. Just to see if she would blink or flinch, he did what she told him to do and removed his clothes right in front of her. To her credit, she did not. He took it from her, noticing that the blood he had just given it was gone. The suit seemed to crumple in his hands, splitting apart before him. That's comforting. The thing fell apart on me, he remarked. Now there was a big rip right through it. There were only 2 holes at the bottom, where his feet obviously went it. Wait, she told him. Press it to yourself and put your feet in the holes. When he did that, it was like the thing suddenly gained a life of its own. It pressed itself against him harder, holding on tight so he could not move. He did try to struggle but could only watch as the suit slipped itself on and then around him. When it stopped, he was wearing the suit. It was form-fitting and gave him mobility enough to move. When he looked down, there was no zipper, just like before. Whoa, if you wish to step out of it, just think about it, and it will do the rest. But I must advise you do it carefully, lest you put yourself in an awkward situation, she said to him. There was a retort on his tongue about learning from under Jiraiya, and knowing all about awkward situations, but he was too busy checking the suit against himself. While this is very fascinating, how exactly does this help me in a fight? It serves as the base for the rest of the armor. She reached into the suitcase again and brought out multiple armor pieces, placing them down on the chairs. He looked them over. They were a set of armored gloves and boots along with a breastplate. There was probably some other kind of term for it, but to him, it was a breastplate. What? No helmet? Where we're going has a breathable atmosphere. You won't need it, thanks. He kept his attention on the pieces of armor, noticing the color scheme, black with dark orange highlights. Did you pick the color scheme just for me? It was considered an appropriate measure. However, we decided to swap the schemes somewhat so it wouldn't look so loud in public. She picked up the breastplate. Now, would you like some help? It might have been his imagination, but she sounded a little insulting as she asked. He took the breastplate from her. I'll be able to take care of it. He wasn't an invalid. As he brought it over his head, the weight settling onto his shoulders, the underside snapped close with a hiss. The sides clasped closed with interlocking plates, all clicking and hissing into one another. Once it was done, it looked like he couldn't get the breastplate off. He took the boots next. They fit his feet just right as he slid them in. But before he could do the standardized test of making sure they fit, bouncing up and down on his heels and then walking around a bit, they seemed to grow a life of their own. Plating rose up and then settled on his thighs, knees, and legs, wrapping themselves around and connecting to stay in place. There was about 2 inches worth of space between the leg plating and the breastplate, but it would most likely vanish when he crouched. His gloves were the same. Once he had them on, plating came out of them, covering his forearms and upper arms. Once it was done, he flexed his fingers and moved his arms, making sure that everything still worked the way it should. "Well, how do I look?" he asked Miranda when he was done checking himself over. "Very intimidating, Commander," she said with a straight face. "Now, can I turn your attention to the function that you'll be able to use? Go right ahead." The breastplate had built-in holsters that are programmable by what weapons you will bring to battle. Simply hold the weapons in question in hand for a period of 5 seconds. The armor will take care of the rest. He took the warhawks and held them against his lower back. He started counting the seconds in his head. Then he noticed something was shifting on his back. "What the?" he started to ask, trying to turn around and look at it. "It's just the metal adapting to you, sir," Miranda explained. He was completely mystified by it all. How in the name of Kami can it do that? How could it also give him a full set of armor from only a pair of boots, gloves, and a breastplate? Self-replicating chakra steel. She made it sound like it was the most obvious thing. Bless you. She didn't bat an eyelash or roll the eyes. "It should be done now. You will now have 2 holsters on your back." He could feel the different shapes on his back already. The metal plating had reformed itself into holsters pointing downward at just enough of an angle to pull out easily, just like he was used to. He slid the pistols home. "Wait, if my chakra's being blocked, how is this working?" "The chakra steel doesn't need active chakra to work. All they need is functioning chakra. You lucked out there, but I'm guessed that the other functions require active chakra?" She nodded once. "Yes, damn, we've got a problem," Quan Misley announced as she came back from the front. If she was worried, it didn't show on her face. "What is it?" Miranda asked her. "We're not getting any kind of transmission from Freedom's Progress." As he stepped out of the ship, Naruto saw that the sky was dark and snow was falling in thick flurries. "Reminds me of the Land of Iron," he commented as he looked up at the sky. "Albeit a little warmer." "That's the suit, sir," Jacob said from behind, his machine gun in hand. "Its internal heaters are keeping you warm." He moved towards the hangar exit. Due to the size of the ship, they landed in the hangar proper instead of one of the smaller pads, which would have gotten them close into the colony. "We need to keep moving," Miranda told the other 3. She wore no armor but held a machine pistol, something that looked a lot bigger and heavier than Naruto's guns. "We need to find out why we haven't been getting a response from the base." "Where is this base of yours?" Naruto asked her. "All I can see is the colony. The base was here first. When the colonists came, the base adapted and moved in around them." "We've got a problem," Jacob said, coming back. "That door is locked up tight. Can it be hacked?" "I took a look. It's running on a security system I've never seen before." She frowned. "We don't have time for this." Good thing Naruto knew a way around that. "Quan Misley, rig it," he ordered. "Yes, sir," the hunter replied instantly, passing Jacob. Once she was at the door, she began placing explosives all across it. It took 2 minutes for her to finish, a testament to her skill and experience. When she was done, she walked away and pressed down on the trigger with a click. It was a controlled explosion, never going farther than it needed to and not living long than it had to. In place of a locked door was now an open way. "Let's go," Naruto said, raising his guns up and stepping forward. "Time to play the game." They went through the hangar door into the small spaceport. There was no one there, which made it more disturbing. They would have thought there'd be bodies or some kind of fight. But it just looked like everyone up and left in the middle of their business. "This is a little spooky," Jacob commented. His eyes roamed around but he could not see any bodies. When they reached the door exiting to the colony, they braced themselves for whatever they might see next. But as the door opened, they saw nothing. "This is too strange," Quan Misley said as they walked through the colony, the snow crunching beneath their feet. "I would have expected some kind of damage to the buildings, at the very least, but it doesn't look like that. The buildings looked pristine, for a colony." "I know, it just looks like everyone just upped and left," Jacob agreed. Miranda chose to focus on their mission rather than the lack of people. "We need find the base," she said to them all. "Do you have a specific place in mind or is it just the base?" Naruto asked her. "I want to reach the communication building. It's on the other of the colony." "Of course it is." He looked upwards with a long-suffering expression. Why can't they ever be where we start? Would that make it too hard or something? Are you done, Commander? She asked him, being perfectly serious. Yeah, I'm done. He looked around at what could pass as a little square in the colony. So now where do we go? All the buildings looked the same to him. Then again, that was what one would expect from a colony. To the northeast, there's a building that will connect us to the other side. She pointed at the building in question, situated right in the corner of the square. He began to walk in the direction pointed, only to come to a stop when he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up on end. You guys feel that? He silently asked. Then he remembered that he couldn't talk to the Bijou. It was really depressing. Commander, what is it? Quan Misley asked him. He didn't answer her, so Jacob asked him. What is it, sir? He didn't answer him either, not at first. He kept looking around the square, trying to find something. We're not alone here, he finally said. Something is watching us. Where? Asked Jacob. I don't know. If he knew where it was, he wouldn't be standing still. We're being watched, and in this day and age, I don't know if it's alive or not. He huffed. It's kinda annoying, really. Sir? He didn't know what else to say to that. Really, what could one say to that when the guy asked the question was over 2,000 years old, and could mean what he said? Nothing, let's keep moving. The only sound they heard as they moved towards the building was the sound of snow being crunched beneath their feet and water trickling away in the nearby man-made stream, as no stream Naruto knew was formed that perfectly. The colony was just getting more and more eerie as they walked. It felt like the slightest sound would either set them off or make them welcome it. Naruto could have dealt with the noise. Kami knows he had dealt with a lot of it in his years, but the silence was stifling. The building had a small ramp leading up to its locked door. Quan Misley, the blonde, said. Yes, sir, the hunter replied, understanding what he meant. Wait, Miranda said, making her stop. She looked over at Naruto. We can't go blowing every locked door we've come across here. It would give away our position, to say the least. You want to hack it? As a matter of fact, yes, she replied. She strode over to the door, activating her Omni tool. She held it before her and began tapping away on it. It's a different code, no doubt. And a little tricky one too, she said aloud, half for them and half for her. But once you understand the trick, it all becomes. The door lights turned green and the door opened. Too easy. Nicely done, Miranda, Jacob told her. She accepted the praise with self-assured grace. The first room looked like some kind of lobby, with a desk and multiple chairs placed neatly in rows in the middle of the room and along the walls too. Even with the colony colors, the place looked bland. The desk had a computer. The chair behind it pushed slightly back like someone had just stood up and left. I don't suppose you can handle a computer? Naruto asked Miranda. Of course, Commander, she said easily, walking past him, going around the desk. If there was anything that could be said about how she bent down over the keyboard, they kept it to themselves. The computer came alive with light but no sound. After a few minutes, she stood back up. It's been cleaned completely. There's nothing on it. All right, let's keep going. There was a door beyond the desk, the only other one in the lobby, so that was where they were going. But as the door opened and they went through, they stepped back in when the hail of bullets started flying. Naruto found himself beside Quan Misley on one side of the door, while Miranda and Jacob were on the other side. Don't come any closer, a voice shouted at them. Its oddly regulated sound marked the speaker as Aquarian. Well, that certainly explains why the two codes were different, Miranda said. The code on the door had been Quarian while the one on the computer was still Alliance Make. Praza, stand down, barked a voice that Naruto knew instantly. Tali, that you? He shouted into the room beyond. Naruto? Came the reply. Wait, you know this guy? Came the male voice. Apparently, he was Praza. Tali, is there any chance we can come in and talk instead of shoot one another? Naruto asked. Fuck no! You stay right there, Praza shouted at him. I wasn't talking to you. Praza, I said stand down. Tali ordered him again. Are you kid? What came next was the sound of a gun hitting a body and said body falling to the ground. Gun mistress, shouted another voice in surprise. When I say stand down, I mean stand down, Tali said. Naruto, get in here. He did as he was told, stepping into the next room. It was a small area that had more doors than anything else, and see a good number of Quarians. He saw a male Quarian, most likely Praza, on the ground at Tali's feet, his hands empty of any weapons, which would make sense since Tali was holding said weapon by the barrel. She hadn't really changed since he last saw her. The only real difference was how she held herself. It was confident. Keela, it really is you, she said as she looked at him. But then her eyes looked over at the hunter behind him. Quan Misli, how? Don't bother asking, Tali, Naruto told her. You won't like the answer. I didn't. Kaden is still dead, he answered bluntly. The Quarian on the ground moaned as he came to. And the Bosch Tet, that is my headache, returns to the land of the living, Tali grumbled. Get up already, Praza. You hit me with my own gun, he grumbled as he did as he was told. You didn't do what I told you to do. And it was barely more than a tap, she told him. Then we have different definitions of tap. She just tossed his rifle back. Here, don't make me knock you unconscious again with it. She looked over at Naruto and the group he was with, her gaze settling on the obvious emblem. Commander, why are you and Quan Misli with the Akatsuki? I can't account for her, he answered with a flick of his eyes at the hunter. But they rescued me yesterday and I haven't been able to get away from them yet. What do you mean rescued? Just what I had said, he replied. His face had nothing that indicated humor for his words. Tali, it was the tribe that hit the Normandy that day. He couldn't see her face exactly, but he could see enough to know that she was surprised by the news. The tribe? She repeated. The tribe, he confirmed. How did you get out then? Joker said that you were still on the ship when his escape pod got out. I don't know. I must have blacked out because I woke in a tribe base with them experimenting on me. He didn't know why exactly he lied. He just had a feeling that he shouldn't go revealing it to the universe. And the Akatsuki rescued you? Yeah, he answered shortly. Commander, with all due respect, Tali, remember that conversation Kaden and Ash had on Vermeer? It had dealt with that phrase. Are you out of your mind? She continued like she hadn't heard him. Do you have any idea what these guys are like? Since I know that you've read the history books and you know my history, I'm going to give you about a minute to reconsider those words so you can find the redundancy and the stupidity of them. The guns from the other Quarians snapped up at that. Before they fired, Tali looked at them. What are you doing? Gun mistress, he threatened you, the Quarian on the far right protested. No, he did not. He pointed out something obvious. Now put those weapons down. The guns went down, albeit reluctantly. Sorry about that, she said to Naruto. He was more interested in something else. Gun mistress? He asked. My rank and title. Excuse me, I would like to ask a question, Miranda asked them both. That is, if I can tear you away from your undoubtedly fascinating conversation. They both looked at her. Ease off the sarcasm there, Tali told her. It's dripping down to the floor. Both Naruto and Quan Misli quirked a smile at that. It didn't last long. Now what do you want? What are Quarians doing here? I could ask the same of the Akatsuki. I asked first. We're here for one of our people who came here on pilgrimage, a man named Vitor. What's a Quarian doing in a human colony? Jacob asked. She turned her gaze to him. If the Akatsuki's here, I'm sure the colony is anything but. Besides, Quarians can go anywhere they want during their pilgrimage. As for Vitor, he always liked helping a small settlement out, since he was always nervous in crowds. Praza opened his mouth, deciding to give some color commentary. What she means was that he was unstable, and when you combine that with damage to his suit's CO2 scrubbers and an infection from open-air exposure, he's likely delirious. Praza, when I want an opinion from you, I'll ask you for it, Tali told him with a glare. Commander, come over here. She walked to the table the Quarians had been using. She tapped away at her Omni-tool, and it soon lit up into a map of the colony. When he saw us landing and coming for him, he retreated into this building here. She tapped the building in question, positioned in another little square, and hasn't come out since. He also somehow managed to take control of the colony's mechs and surrounded the building with them, making it almost impossible to get through with major injuries, possibly more than acceptable deaths. Are you saying that this Quarian attacked the humans in the colony? Jacob asked her, tightening his grip on his gun. It was noticed and other people started tightening their grips as well. That is, except for two people. Ease off, both Naruto and Tali said in the same kind of voice, looking at the other squad. They did not glare nor did they yell, but everyone did as they were told. Tali? Asked Naruto, looking at his former teammate. Jacob did have a point with his questions. She knew it too and she had an answer for him. The humans were already gone by the time we landed. We didn't find any bodies. As far as we can tell, they just left. Why would they do that? Miranda asked. They're humans, enough said, Praza replied with a snort. Praza? Barked Tali, whipping her head around to fix her gaze on him, lowering her arm and letting the map disappear. If you wish to continue with your death wish, keep talking like that. We'll be sure to give you a funeral with what parts of you that remain. Now would you kindly shut the Bosch Tet up? In any case, it's probably best if we work together. Want to team up? Naruto asked her. That's not a bad idea, she conceded. With the way the drones and mechs are positioned, it's going to take at least 2 teams to get through. Wait, we're working with the Akatsuki now? Demanded Praza, who was seemingly unable to keep his mouth shut. No, Praza, you're working for me. If you can't follow orders, go wait on the ship so I can beat you with your own gun again in private. Clear? Yeah, he grumbled to himself. She gave him one long look before turning her attention back to the humans there. Do you have a plan for the 2 of us to work together? Naruto asked her. She nodded. Yes, I do. She brought the Omni tool back up, bringing back into the realm of living. She pointed at 2 entryways into the area Vitor had hidden himself, lighting up as she did so. These are the only 2 ways into the square from where we are currently. If one team tries to go in, they'd be attacked on sight. But if 2 went in at the same time, we might be able to get at least a foothold in the area to push ahead. He looked at the map. One route went through the colony proper and went to what could be defined as the main entryway. The other went through what could be barely described as an alleyway, coming out through the side. My team will take the alleyway, he told her. The what? She asked with a tone of confusion. That way, he said, jabbing his finger at the alleyway. All right, we'll see you there. Take that door over there, she gestured to the doors to the left. It'll lead you to the path. She turned off the map and turned to her team. Move out. Those who were sitting down stood up. Together, they left through a door on the right. All right, let's move it, Naruto said to his own team. Sir, can we trust them? Quanmisli asked him as they started walking towards their own door. He came to a stop and turned to stare right at her. He said nothing, but she knew what he was thinking. Things have changed in the past 2 years, sir. And friends can become enemies. You don't think I'm not aware of that? He asked her. Me of all people? There was Sasuke, of course. But he wasn't the only one who had changed their allegiance. There had been more than enough shinobi who had turned traitor during the war, some who he had even considered friends at times. Some had done it for survival, some out of fear, but most did for the chance of power, and that was what had made him harden his heart against them. You still haven't answered her question, Commander, Miranda said. Can we trust them? I'm not going to lose my trust in Tali until she gives me a reason to lose it. He looked at Quanmisli. His silent implication was not lost on her. Now let's move it. The door led them into a small corridor, and then into the alleyway he had seen on the map. Now that he saw, calling it an alleyway might have been a bit insulting. This was too tidy and clean to be a proper alleyway. It even had a stream trickling alongside. That was something he never thought he would think to see in an alleyway. They walked silently, letting only the sound of the stream trickling by be the only sound. It was peaceful, too peaceful for him. Keep an eye out, he told the others. This is too easy. It was only a few seconds later when his words came true. Drones on the roofs! Shouted Quanmisli, already swinging her gun upwards. Everyone else did the same, seeing the drones seemingly staring down at them. Wait, do not fire, Miranda told them all, even though she had her weapon out too. The drones came off the rooftops and started floating their way down. Why? Asked Naruto. They were getting a little too close for comfort for him. Just don't. She kept her gun ready, but she looked up at the drones. Voice command, Lawson, Miranda, 002 security. Re-establish on rooftop and deactivate, she said in a loud authoritative voice. The drones hovered there for a long moment. Only one let off a shot before they returned fire with guns and biotics. Sheesh, these things do have a kick to them, Naruto silently remarked as he aimed and fired the Warhawks. If he wasn't careful, he was liable to send his arms reeling back with the kick. In the end, the drones fell to the ground, destroyed. Why did that happen? Jacob asked as he looked at them. You heard the Quarian, Miranda told him. Their target reprogrammed the security in the colony. That Quarian has a name, Naruto said. I expect you to remember and use it. As you say, Commander, she replied easily enough. But your security level is one of the highest in the Akatsuki, Miranda said Jacob. The only one higher than you is the elusive man. Vitor couldn't have reprogrammed the security to that extent. Apparently he did. We need to get moving, Quanmisli said. Yes, we need to get to where more fun is waiting for us, Naruto said with sarcasm laced lightly in his voice. He looked over at the hunter. EMPs? Yes, sir, she answered. Good. They started walking again, stepping over the drones in their way. The alleyway twisted into a turn, and when they took it, they saw a couple of humanoid mechs with weapons in their way. It's just a couple of Loki mechs, Jacob said as they observed from behind the curve of the alleyway. We should be fine. Loki? Repeated the blonde in the group. A new type of security droid that came into production in the past 2 years, Miranda told him. They're named after the Midgardian god of mischief. You two would probably get along quite well. He ignored the remark. Why would someone name a droid after a god of mischief? Naming it after the god of war or protection might have been better. It's never been a pressing issue to ask. Whatever. He looked once at Quan Misley. She took the hint and reached for the EMP grenades she had at the ready, pulling out two. With a quick step out into the line of sight, she attracted the attention of the droids. Then she threw the EMPs and stepped back out of sight. There was no explosion when the grenades detonated, just a quick surge of electricity, and the droids fell to the ground. I see your aim is as good as ever, he remarked as they continued moving down the alley. She didn't say anything. It was about 2 minutes later when they got a call from Tali. Naruto, are you there? She called through the comm. Tell me you're using the same frequency. I'm here, Tali, he replied. The suit had a comm built in, meaning he didn't need a piece in his ear anymore. We've got a problem. What kind? The stupid kind, she answered. Praza and his squad rushed on ahead. Oh, for the love of Cammy, he groaned. Honestly, why did this stuff happen? Sorry. I tried telling them to wait for you to get into position, but they wouldn't listen. Did you consider whacking Praza upside the head again with his gun? He was out of reach and moved too fast. They want to find Vitor and take him away before you get to him first. What happened to trust? I trust you, Commander. But we don't trust your company. The line went dead after that. Come on, now we really need to get moving, he said to the others. He took off at a run, barreling down the alleyway. Damn, he moves fast, Jacob commented as they took after him. They only took his chakra away, Miranda said in reply. That wasn't the only thing Naruto Uzumaki had in his arsenal. The alleyway became something of a blur as they ran towards the exit. Naruto's mind went directly to autopilot. If there were any more drones or mechs in the way, he hadn't noticed them when they were functioning or being destroyed. Commander, we've got a bigger problem now, Tali announced over the comm. We're almost there, Tali, he replied, seeing the end of the alleyway. You'd better hurry it up. Vitor managed to reprogram a heavy mech. Praza's down, and the rest of his squad is going the same way. Shit! They did want to get to Vitor first, Miranda stated. He came out of the alleyway into the little square. It looked the first except that was littered with mechs and drones. Some were still operational but most were destroyed, either from gunfire or what appeared to be swatted or stepped on. What the hell happened here? If I had to guess, I'd say that the Quarians set the heavy mech on rampage, Jacob commented as he saw the damage done as well. It was like looking at a battlefield made entirely of robots. That's an actual function? Midgardian tech, he said in way of an answer. They're going to have a rampage function. Speaking of the heavy mech, Miranda said, it's over there. They all looked at where she was gesturing at and saw the heavy mech currently stomping its way around the center of the square, going after what few Quarians remained. When it wasn't firing the missiles attached to it, it was unloading with the guns in the other arm. Someone, help, please! One of the Quarians shouted as they ran from the heavy mech. Ask and you shall receive, Naruto thought sarcastically as he lifted up his guns and started firing at the mech. It turned his attention towards him, which was what he wanted. Fall back and take care of the other mechs, he shouted at the Quarians. I'll deal with this thing, it's all yours. The same Quarian said with more the obvious relief in his voice. Quan Misley, help them, he ordered the hunter as she came up beside him. Without breaking step, she turned and stepped towards the Quarians, her hands already grabbing a grenade. Tali, I could use some technical backup. He could see her from her entrance, but she was too far away to actually speak to. You got it, she replied through the comm. Excuse me, Commander, but I'm right here, Miranda said to him with a hint of annoyance. I know, Tali. I don't know you. Now start shooting that thing. As you wish, she said, raising her weapon and opening fire. Find cover where you can. He drove behind a big pile of destroyed mechs as a missile flew overhead, sailing through just the space where he was. He lifted himself up and started shooting at the heavy mech. Miranda and Jacob were crouching behind similar piles and firing just like he was. This thing has got some heavy armor on it, not to mention its shields, Jacob said over the noise. I'll take care of the shields, you just hammer away at the armor, Tali declared through the comm. She was working her way towards them, her Omni tool at work. You heard the lady, Naruto said. Miranda, use your biotics to crush its armaments. Jacob, destroy the optics. I'll aim for the legs. With any luck, we'll have this thing blind, crippled, and weaponless. The three of them aimed for their designated part. Within seconds they were in the middle of a gunfight that sent the piles and mounds of dead machinery flying with each missile and cannon fire. The humans, realizing that it was trying to get them with each missile or cannon fire, soon moved out of the, rather scant, protection of broken machine parts, strafing the heavy mech and hiding in what protection they could find. Shields have been taken offline, Tali announced before drawing her shotgun and joining the fight, coming to Jacob's side and aiming at the optics. They all saw the blue shimmer that was the shielding flicker briefly, and then vanish. As they fought, they figured out that if they got near the building Tali had pointed out on the map, the mech would swing its attention to the person and open fire on them. While he wasn't hit by any of the missiles, the cannons were quicker and hit Naruto good. But his armor shields held and he was quick enough to dodge so they could replenish. He could, and later would, admit that he would be dead now without that armor. He ran circles around the mech, shooting at the legs. When it started to wobble, he knew that he had made enough damage to make it so and kept it going. The heavy mech fired a missile at Miranda. She stood up, bold as brass, caught the missile with her biotics, and crushed right in front of the mech. It then toppled over by the ensuing explosion, which the wobbliness in the legs helped quite well. It looked like a giant toad falling down onto its side. The optics was still alit, and the cannons were still functioning. It fired off 2 shots at Naruto. The first sent him skidding back and the second knocked him to the ground. Tali and Jacob opened fire, shooting the optics out with a shot apiece. As they had been aiming for the thing the entire time, they were satisfied when it finally broke. Miranda glowed blue and used her biotics to destroy the cannons. "Now it is," she said after the explosion was over. "Thanks for telling me," Naruto said back as he got back up. He saw Quan Misley coming towards him and also saw that the Quarians were holding position at their entrance to the square. The implication was clear, nothing else needed to be said. "Alright, let's go." "Wait, for what?" he asked. The heavy mech exploded and sent flying burning pieces of metal everywhere. It was raining metal for a good minute or so. "That," she said with a straight face. When it finally stopped raining, the Quarians came from their positions and began looking around the wreckage. Looking for what, Naruto didn't know. Tali, on the other hand, ran for the door of the building the heavy mech had been protecting from everyone. "Tali, wait!" Naruto shouted after her, but she kept running. She ran right into the building itself, the door opening and closing in a matter of seconds. "Kami, take it." He took after her, and he could hear the others follow him about 3 steps behind. And it also sounded like the Quarians were about 5 steps behind them. The door opened and he found himself in another lobby. A door closing up and to the far right told him where Tali had gone. He followed and went through the same door, finding himself in a semi-dark room that was barely lit by the computer screens on the other side. Standing before the screens were Tali and another Quarian, undoubtedly Vitor. "Vitor, you're safe now. I promise you," Tali told him gently with assuring hands on his shoulders. No, not safe, never safe," he replied, shaking his head. "Yes, you are." She turned her head and saw Naruto standing there. When the rest of his team joined him, her eyes narrowed slightly, more so when the door closed and locked. "Commander, I need to take him back to the fleet. He has to be taken care of." "I'm not stopping you," he replied. "Wait a minute," Miranda said, taking a step forward. "He was here when the colonists disappeared. He knows what happened." "I do." "Yes, I do," Vita said. "I recorded everything that happened here. It's all in my Omnitool." Tali stepped in front of Vita protectively, her hands going for the shotgun. "He's not going anywhere with you." "We're not going to hurt him," Jacob assured her. "We just want to find out what he knows." "Your people already tried breaking their word with us," Miranda said. "We give him to you, we may never find out what happened here." "If you're talking about Praza, please remember that he was an idiot, and he's dead along with most of his squad," she retorted. "If you just want the data from his Omnitool, you can have that. But Vitor is coming with me." "That he is," Naruto said firmly. "But we'll want a copy of the data. I can give you that. Is your Omnitool ready?" He looked at her for a moment, and then at his left arm. I don't think it's even on." He waved it a few times but got nothing. She rolled her eyes. "I thought you knew how to do that already." "It's a new suit," he protested. "What does that have to do with anything?" "We'll take the copy," Quan Misley said. The Quarian gave the hunter one look before going over to Naruto. "Hold out your hand," she told him. He did so, and she activated her own Omnitool. Within seconds his own Omnitool lit up, showing how good she was at her abilities. "There. It'll act normally now," she told him. "I also sent them the data." She pointed at Miranda. "Thanks, Tali," he said, closing his Omnitool. "You know, I could use someone I trust on my team." "If you had asked me that question 2 years ago, I would have said yes in a heartbeat," she replied after a moment of silence. "But I have duties and responsibilities now, Commander. I can't abandon them." Even though he could not see her face, he could tell that she was apologetic. "I'm sorry." "It's all right, Tali," he told her. "Like you said, you have responsibilities now. He gestured at Viter, who still looked twitchy. He's one of them. Yes, he is. She reached out and took the other Quarian gently by the arm. Come on, Viter. As they started walking past everyone, they stopped at the locked door, and she looked back. Next time, please don't lock my people outside. This is an Akatsuki base, Miranda replied. I am not going to let information from here fall into the wrong hands. We didn't come for that. Her Omni tool lit up again, and the red lock on the door turned green. She and Vita walked out, leaving them alone in a room with computer screens buzzing away in their ears. Codex entry. Technology Tanegashima Arsenal Naginata class Chakra Lance. With every conflict in space comes shipwrecks and salvage that can be worth a fortune. Because of its history in naval warfare, both at sea and in space, the Systems Alliance has always had sanctioned salvagers that work hard to recycle materials from shipwrecks. To aid them in their work, they use the Naginata. The Naginata is a common tool used for salvagers used as a chakra chainsaw to cut ships into manageable pieces. The tool takes in chakra from the wielder, and amplifies and shapes it into a blade of pure chakra that cuts a clean line into any surface like a water saw. The amplifier in the blade makes it such that even a frontiersman with such little chakra reserves can use it to cut a small ship evenly into pieces. The more chakra is put out by the wielder, the longer the blade becomes. However, the more chakra is put out by the wielder, the more tired the wielder becomes. Due to its specialization as an arms manufacturer, Tanegashima Arsenal also intended for the Naginata to be used as a weapon like its namesake. The Naginata was essentially a katana blade on a long pole, used in a manner not too different from a frontier glaive. Specialists that use this weapon in the Alliance are put into groups called Lancers Companies, and are at ease either fighting on the front lanes of a battlefield or protect an area from attack. Some Fianna clans from the frontier devote themselves to wielding such weapons and have customized their own to match the glaive rather than the Naginata. To prevent its use by council species, it has a chakra-based lock that will not activate the lance until a wielder with chakra grips it. Unfortunately, some shipments of the Naginata are stolen by Ronin bandits to use as a tool for piracy. Still, they do not surrender the weapons to non-humans. 35 Your what? Location Naruto. This time, he wasn't in the burning forest. He wasn't even in a tree. He was perched on a wooden beam high in the air, looking down on the room below. He knew that even though he wasn't in the forest, it was the same kind of dream, for the edges of the building blurred and flickered like smoke. But that didn't have his attention. That was solely on the table in the middle of the room. It was a big circular table with a lot of maps on it, and people standing all around it. And they were people he knew. He knew them very well. Sakura, you're not thinking straight, Shikamaru told the pink-haired Kunoichi. No, I'm thinking quite clearly, Shikamaru, she replied calmly, a focused look on her face. I'll lead the first assault on Midgard. You've been out of action. You're only just getting back into active status. You're rusty. Excuses, she replied. We both know that the rust can easily be scraped off. I'll be leading the assault. He didn't try to argue any further. Instead, he sighed and pinched his nose. You're not making this any easier on me than it already is. I swear I'm getting gray hairs just planning this invasion. I got news for you, Shikamaru, Temari said from by his side. Those hairs were already there. There was a small smile on her lips, and she leaned on him slightly, letting him feel that comforting weight on his shoulder. Troublesome woman, he replied with no venom in his voice. If the two of you are done, Sakura asked them pointedly, tell me where we're going to hit. Sasuke, why aren't you trying to stop her? Ino asked him from across the table. She had grown up too, but it seemed like she still liked wearing purple clothing. Her hair was long again, twisted into a braid. Because if I wasn't in charge of leading the frontier invasion, I would be going to Midgard with her, he answered. If his weapon was on him, he probably would have gripped it tight. She looked at him, and then at her friend. Is there nothing that'll persuade you to stay, Sakura? She asked. Ino, I am going, her friend repeated again. You retired, Sakura. You became a mother, and you retired. They killed my baby girl. She's not the only one you have. For the love of Kami, Sakura. What about your other children? It won't work, Ino, Naruto thought. He knew that look on Sakura's face. It had been one he had seen a lot after coming back from his trip. It was one of determination, sheer and utter determination. When she had that look, it meant that she was going to follow through with whatever it was she was going to do, and anyone who stood in her way did so at their own peril. Ino, she's going, the old woman at the head of the table said. Well, she didn't look old. Tsunade had decided to age her illusion a little, putting on some pounds and adding in gray hairs. But she did not wear the Hokage hat. That belonged to the masked man beside her, the hat obscuring his smoky gray hair. If Sasuke couldn't persuade her to stay, if I couldn't persuade her to stay, if her children couldn't persuade her to stay, if her old sensei and Hokage couldn't persuade to stay, what hope do you have? The Yamanaka opened his mouth to say something but nothing came out. She looked at everyone there, the remaining Konoha 12 and the senior command of the shinobi forces. They were resolute. Finally, she turned to look at her friend. You come back. You hear me? I will not tell your children that you died because of this. My children are adults, not all of them. You are going to come back alive, Sakura Haruno, or so help Kami I will drag your spirit out of hell so you can apologize to them for dying. There was a fire in her eyes that told everyone that she meant every word that she had just said. Sakura stared back at her. Her eyes, which had been hard and cold up till then, warmed enough for Naruto to see the girl he had known. Thank you, Ino, she said with a smile. I will, Commander, shouted Jacob's voice, jolting Naruto awake. His gun was already out of the holster before he recognized who it was. Are you trying to get yourself killed, Jacob? He demanded, lowering the war hawk to rest at his side. He was out of the armor and had only one holster strapped to the black hoodie he was wearing. Sorry, sir, he apologized, but I had to wake you. Why? You guys seem to have everything handled. Since the Quarians had left Freedom's Progress, Miranda had called in support from nearby Akatsuki locations. They had arrived in a matter of hours and immediately set to work fixing the colony, giving it a sense of life again, which was important if the Alliance came by to take a random look. Seeing as he had no understanding of modern building techniques and manpower wasn't really an issue, Naruto had spent the past day giving his body a workout and making sure that it was still in good and proper condition, which it was. Once that had been done, he found a bench out of the way of everything and had fallen asleep. The elusive man wants to talk to you. If those words were supposed to galvanize him off the bench and start walking, they didn't. Instead, he stretched and yawned exaggeratingly. When he did stand up, it was only so he could scratch his back, even though he had no itch there. So who is this guy? Your boss or something? He asked. Yes, he is, and he is waiting to speak to you. He can wait until I get some food in my stomach. I'm hungry, sir, he wants to talk to you right now. He looked at Jacob and groaned softly. You're going to insist that I go see him before I do anything else, aren't you? He could see it in the eyes. Yes, sir, he answered without shame. Can I at least get some food? If he could make his stomach grumble on command, he would have done it right then and there. He wants to see you now, Commander. Arg, fine, he grumbled. Let's go. They walked out of the alleyway, if it could be called that. The bench was in and back into the square. The mechs and rubble were cleared away, making the place clean and rather nice looking. It was busy with people walking about, carrying equipment, weapons, or supplies. Quite a few of them were high up on the surrounding rock walls, using chakra lances to carve out entrenchments for something. He and Jacob were rather much ignored. They reached the building where Vitor had been hiding. Turns out that it had been the communication building. You guys clean up fast, Naruto remarked as he took in the lobby. It had been a mess last time he was in here. It was the first place we took care of, Miranda said. It was obvious that she had been waiting for them by the way she was leaning against a nearby wall with folded arms, making the pose look mysterious and alluring. Good thing his training with Jiraiya enabled him to ignore that. Where do I go? She pointed to the door to his left. Go that way until you reach the next room. Once there, step inside the blue circle. Everything else will be taken care for you. He turned to his left and went through the door. His feet kept a steady rhythm as he went down the stairs. At the bottom was another door. He went through it and saw the blue circle in the center of the floor. Beside from that, there was nothing else in the room. He stepped onto the circle and he waited. And he waited, and he waited. If he was outside, he might have been hearing crickets chirping. You're not on Earth anymore, Naruto, he reminded himself. You'd probably hear some kind of space whale. He was certain that there was one out there too. A humming sound began to fill his ears. He turned his head, trying to find where it was coming from. He didn't see anything, but the sound persisted. Where the hell is that coming from? Commander, please stay still, Miranda's voice told him through an intercom. He whipped his head upwards. Miranda, why are you listening in on me? Please stay still. The hologram generator needs you to be still in order to fully map you before projection. What? He said with a look of confusion. Half of that sentence didn't make any sense. Stay still, Commander. The humming grew in volume. At his feet an orange glow appeared and started to rise up. Okay, this is weird, he thought to himself. Intersecting vertical and horizontal lines appeared in the glow as it rose upward, also appearing on his body as well. Scratch that, This is very weird. Soon he was covered from head to toe in the light, and the room around went dark. For a moment he just stood there, waiting for something to happen. But nothing happened. Hello? He called out, anybody home? No reply. Is anyone there? No reply again. So he just decided to wait and whistle. An old tune from his childhood came to his lips and it echoed around the darkness. When he couldn't remember any more of the tune, he let it fade away from his lips. Something came out of the darkness, dressed in a black coat adorned with red clouds and an orange mask that swirled around to an eye. Hello? My name is Toby and I am a good boy, the person said, flapping his arms around energetically. Who are you? Huh. Huh. The blonde forced himself to pull his hand away from the gun already in his grip. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, they were as hard as ice. Whoever you are, if this is your idea of a joke, I'm not laughing. Now get your ass out here before I find you and kill you. The flapping image of Toby slowed to a stop and then froze. Forgive me, Commander. I just wanted to see how you felt when facing such an image, a voice told him. It didn't sound like it was coming from an intercom. Rather, it sounded like it was next to him, a person leaning on his shoulder. You should have known. I did. I still wanted to see it. The image vanished. So did the darkness. Naruto found himself standing in what was a large office. He saw no desk, just a man in a chair smoking a cigarette. High in the air near his chair were a few screens that showed information that he didn't understand or tried to. Behind him was what could be described as a window. It had to be a window, for there was no way a giant sun, glowing orange, red, and blue with its heat, could just hang in the background. The light from the sun was enough to light the office so Naruto could see it, but not enough for him to see it perfectly. The man in the chair was literally nondescriptive. Judging by his height, and compensating for the fact that he was sitting down, he was of average size. His silver-gray hair was the only sign of his age, and in some light, it could be passed off as brown. He looked like he could vanish into a crowd of faces and never be found again. His clothes were a simple suit, completely ordinary yet rich in their fabric and design, showing that he had money to burn. But there was just one thing about him that stood out: his eyes. They were not normal. The first thing one noticed about them is that they glowed eerily in the semi-darkness of the place. The second thing that was noticed was that there was an ice blue to the glow. The third was that there was a shape in the eyes that was vaguely suggestive of a Mangekyo Sharingan. Commander Naruto Uzumaki, the man greeted him. I would say it is an honor to meet you, but I have a feeling that you would rather rip my head off for that little display. Who the fuck are you? He asked shortly and irritably. He only raised his cigarette to his lips and taking a long drag from it. He blew out the smoke and watched as it traveled in the air. What would you say if I told that I am known by many names? I asked you a question. Who the fuck are you? He was in no mood for games. He tapped the ashes of the cigarette in a little tray that was built into the chair. I am the Elusive Man. I am the leader of the third incarnation of the Akatsuki. Naruto frowned. What the hell do you mean? There's only been one Akatsuki before you. That is where you are wrong. You are most familiar with the second incarnation of the Akatsuki. But the first was created by shinobi in Amigekure that were tired of war and wanted peace. They were led by one of Jiraiya's disciples, a man named Yahiko. He hadn't known much about Yahiko, but what he did know was that if he had been trained by Jiraiya, Yahiko would do something like that. He would try form a group to make peace with others. But that didn't mean he had lost the sour feeling in his stomach ever since Jacob had told him that his boss was calling. I'd ask for your forgiveness, but I really don't want to. That is perfectly understandable, but please don't confuse us with the Akatsuki you know. Yeah, right, he replied. It is the truth. The Akatsuki as it stands for now follow the original group's goals, not the ones that you know. You want peace and yet you fight? I have trouble believing that. If peace is to be made, all sides must want peace. And sometimes, the only way to get that peace is to make your enemies want it. The Akatsuki is dedicated to that goal as well as ensuring that humanity reaches its full potential in the universe. The tribe of Athame and in turn, the council are intent on stopping that. We've got a place on the council. He took a drag from his cigarette. And did that stop them from attacking your ship and taking you captive? All he got was silence. Exactly my point. As you've said before, Commander, we are in a shadow war with the tribe. And despite what you would like to believe, you are now a part of that war. The first response he got was a hard scowl. You really think that I'm going to join you? Not as a part of the Akatsuki, no, the Elusive Man replied. I am not so foolish to think that. But I do think that you would aid us, as a contractor if you will. Let me put it to you in words you will be able to understand. 2 phrases, actually. Hell no. Fuck no. I would say that is a shame, if I didn't know that you don't really have a choice in the matter. I do have a choice. Commander, let me point the facts for you. You are on a foreign planet with no knowledge of what system you are in. You do not have any knowledge to be able to fly a ship, nor will any ship fly you off planet without my say-so. To the rest of the galaxy, you have been presumed dead for the past 2 years, and any public reappearance of yours will most likely be considered a hoax which will undoubtedly draw the attention of the tribe back onto you. And there is the matter of you not being able to utilize your chakra. He was right, Naruto could see that. Every point he had just laid out was the truth. But that didn't mean he had to like it. You son of a bitch, he growled out. That's unnecessary, the elusive man rebuffed coldly as he took another drag. I am offering you a chance to fight back against those who had captured, experimented on, and chained you. That is, unless you wish for your chakra to remain locked away. You think they have a way of getting the inhibitors out? Why else would they have put them in? The tribe is nothing but thorough. Of course, that is not the only reason I wish for you to help us. What else is there? He asked, disbelief evident in his voice and how he crossed his arms. He was being blackmailed into helping. Why would there be any other reason needed? He stood up from his chair and walked over to him in slow, measured steps. While you've been, let's say, away, entire colonies have been disappearing. Human colonies, he enunciated clearly. You've already seen the handiwork there on Freedom's progress. Despite what the Council might say or do, their response has been marginal at best. It leads us to believe that the tribe is a part of what is happening. We want you to help investigate this and, if possible, end it before too many lives are lost. Fine. The blonde didn't really have a choice in the matter anyway. But I'm not doing this alone. I never said that you had to. In addition to Miranda and Jacob, you will receive dossiers on soldiers, scientists, and mercenaries I think best suited to aid you in your mission. But be warned, finding them and convincing them to join you will be on you. He touched a screen on his left with a few flicks of his hand. Naruto felt a beep coming from his Omni tool and looked at it briefly. It told him that he had gotten them. Gee, thanks, he said as he made the Omni tool disappear. You're very welcome. I'd recommend that you first head to Omega. You will find a Solarian named Dr. Morden Solis and a vigilante called Archangel that will most certainly help you. A blue screen appeared at his right, and he touched it once. The giant office disappeared from Naruto's sight, bringing him back to the room. He stepped off the circle and left the room. Miranda and Jacob were waiting for him at the top of the stairs beyond the door. You've been given the dossiers? Miranda asked him. He activated his Omni tool and brought up the dossiers. Yeah, I did. Good. I'll get the ship ready. We'll leave for Omega within the hour, Jacob declared, turning to leave. We're not going to Omega, Naruto said as he looked through the dossiers. There were only a few, but there was probably a good reason for that. He looked back, but to his credit, he did not look flabbergasted. Why? 2 reasons. The first is because I don't trust the elusive man. I'll go where I want to go. And the second? He asked. That one he didn't answer right away. There's a woman there who's probably not going to be happy to see me right now. You mean Arya Tloke? You know about that? Practically every group that has an intelligence group working for them knows about it, Miranda said dryly. You weren't exactly subtle or quiet about it. There's another rumor that you helped produce the latest album of Bijou, Jacob added. He didn't say anything to that, but Miranda did. Jacob, that's just gossip, but it's gossip that includes him. He is standing right here. Thank you, the blonde chimed in, still flickering through the dossier. He had been over them twice now, and knew what he wanted to get first but kept looking through them to look busy. So where are we going, Commander? Miranda asked him. Here, he declared, going for the dossier in question and opening it for them. They read the dossier, and only Jacob had a visible reaction. Purgatory? He asked, surprised. You really want to go there first? That's what I said. I tell the pilot to get the ship ready, Miranda said, turning for the entrance. By the way, Commander, if you wish to make a strong statement, that's the place for your armor. Noted, he replied. First things first, though. He needed food. Location, Purgatory. The team was silent as the ship docked with the prison. They were docking at a gate that would, as the Turian on the other end had put it, make everything go smoother. They were here in order to get the person of interest, a dangerous criminal known mostly as Jack. Normally, it would have been a bit of pain to break him free of the prison this soon. Naruto would have tried it with a week's worth of planning, at the least, but the Akatsuki had already paid for his release. All they had to do was pick him up. The ship settled into place, and the hatch opened to reveal the long corridor that ran up to the prison. Okay, time to play the game, Naruto said to himself as he stepped off the ship. His team followed him as he walked down the corridor to the door ahead. Beyond the door was a flight of stairs which headed in a turn to the right. Once they reached the top, they stood at the end of another long corridor with another door at the end of it. The difference was that this door was bigger, and there were guards standing around it. Some were milling around, others actually tried to look like they were on duty. They all looked rather unimpressed by what they saw, but beneath that air of being uninterested, Naruto saw some measure of competence. They knew how to handle their weapons and how to move in the blue-white armor that marked them as Blue Suns. They kept walking forward until one of the guards stepped in their way. "Welcome to the Purgatory, Commander Uzumaki," the guard, a bulky-looking Turian, said. There was a note of derision in his voice, like he couldn't believe the person he was speaking to was who he said he was. "Your package is being prepped, and you can claim it shortly." He didn't say anything, and the guard found himself looking at the entirety of the man standing before him. The robe he wore was as pitch black as the coat of a specter. The way it fell over his body made it look it held more than just him, but the way he moved showed that it had been made to fit his body. He could barely see the armored gloves in the sleeves, but they were there all the same. That wasn't all there was to him, though. Beneath the robe was a set of armor just as black as the robe. Orange highlighted it in running lines, giving it and him a sinister glow. Atop his head was a helmet the same color of the highlights, shadowed by the hood he wore. Emblazoned black against the glowing orange helmet was a snarling fox designed in such a way that he was reminded of a great jungle tattoo he once saw. When the lights overhead flickered, so did the glow, giving him images of a place after life, place of eternal flames and pain. He unconsciously gulped before continuing. "As this is a high-security vessel, you'll need to relinquish your weapons before we proceed." All he got was silence. "Commander, please have you and your team relinquish your weapons." "No," the human said, a quiet word that echoed in his ears. The other Blue Suns took note of the word and became interested in what came next. Bodies stood up and fingers reached for triggers. "Commander, hand over your weapons," the guard told him again. "I said no already? Are you deaf?" He might have brought his gun up and pressed it against that damn glowing helmet if he hadn't heard the door to the prison open and the familiar sound of his boss's gate come striding in. "Everyone, stand down." "Commander, I am Warden Kirill, and this is my ship. Congratulations." "You know who I am," he replied, looking at the warden. He was a Turian that wore the same kind of armor the other Blue Suns wore. There was no tribal patterning on his face, just his skin color of dark brown. He only had one gun on his back, and it was a monster of one. "Indeed I do. The Akatsuki informed me of your arrival, and who you intended to pick up. Your weapons will be returned on the way out. You realize that this is just a standard procedure. I guess you weren't listening to what I was saying to your guard. The weapons stay with us," he scowled. "Commander, I am afraid I'm going to have to insist. If you don't willingly give up your weapons, we will be forced to take them from you." The Blue Suns heard the threat in his voice and all took one step forward. But then they suddenly stopped and froze in place. "Do you all feel that cold feeling at the back of your neck?" Naruto asked them, his helmeted eyes still keeping their gaze on a point past the first guard. The others on his team stepped back a little, staying out of the way of his intent to kill. "That would be the last warning you get before you make the biggest mistake you can with me. You taking away the weapons won't do you any good. You just give me an excuse to get in close. I'm a shinobi. I am a weapon. The closer I am, the deadly I am." He looked at the warden, barely lifting his head. "You sure you want to risk that?" If the warden was human, a sweat would have broken out on his brow. It was like the armored human grew bigger with each word he spoke, becoming more and more threatening and dangerous. That cold feeling on his neck seemed to be getting colder as well. But once he was done speaking, the Turian blinked and he was the same size again. The feeling was gone too. He breathed in and out before finally saying, "Let them proceed. Our facility is more than secure enough to handle 3 armed guests." The guards stepped out of their way. "Smart move," Naruto said as he stepped forward, his team following him. "We're bringing out the convict you wanted out of cryo," the warden said. "As soon as the funds clear, you can be on your way. If you'll follow me to out processing for the pickup, Commander." He turned back to the door. "Lead the way," he replied, following him. The door opened to a windowed corridor on both sides. They saw that the corridor ran through a large room filled with machinery that was fully operational. No one said anything as they walked through the corridor, able to see everything there. But once they went through a door into the next room and they saw it was exactly the same, the warden started speaking. "Cell block 2, he said by ways of introduction. "As you can see, We keep a tight control over the population. No one said anything as they walked and watched the machines pull tubes out and in of the racks. Those that were being taken out were carried off to parts unknown. Taking the silence as grounds to continue, Kirill did so. Each prisoner's cell is a self-contained, modular unit. I've blown out a few as an example. A small surge of disgust filled Naruto. He enjoys what he talks about. He could see it in the way the Turian walked past other Blue Suns and met with the swagger and the confidence in his voice. And yet, where there was confidence, there was also control and discipline. He might enjoy what he did, but he was smart enough to not let it go overboard. The ship is made up of 30 cell blocks identical to this one, he told them all, stopping for a moment, and waving a brief hand at the cell around them before walking again. We house thousands of criminals, and if the thousands of criminals get loose? Naruto asked him, keeping his voice quiet as they turned a corner. That can happen. But we can put the place in lockdown on a moment's notice. Nothing goes wrong here. Something has to go wrong. What if one of them tries to escape? Asked Jacob. We're in space, he said, an amused smirk on his lips, or what could pass as a smirk for a Turian. They have nowhere to go, and they know it. But still, we exercise extreme caution. These are dangerous individuals. Movement from the corner of his eye caught Naruto's attention. He turned to look down and saw that two prisoners were fighting with each other while a guard looked on with amusement. It lasted for a couple of seconds before the guard finally decided to act, activating his Omni 2. A nearby pole rose up from its resting station, glowing blue with Ezo. With barely a sound, which might have been because of the glass, the pole lit up with two streams of Ezo, one for each prisoner. It separated them into two different bubbles, safely away from each other. They pounded on the bubbles for a couple of seconds longer, really wanting to get at one another again. But they soon stopped, looking tired. Kirill saw what he had seen and smirked again. As you can see, we have many ways to control the population. Impressive, Naruto said shortly. He mentally conceded that if he had to break Jack out of this place, it would have taken more than a week of planning to do so. They came to another door that opened for them. Thank you, he replied as they walked through and came to a three-way crossroads with a corridor going off to the left. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to confirm the funds from the Akatsuki cleared. He turned back. Our processing is straight down the hallway. He waved vaguely straight ahead. Just keep going past the interrogation rooms and the Supermax wing. Thanks. He started walking away. I'll catch with you later, Commander. That did not sound good, Jacob said quietly as they continued forward, finding a door at the end. Agreed, Miranda replied as the door opened. We should remain alert. She cast a look at Naruto's back, but he didn't say anything about that or her words. The next corridor did not go through a cell block. All they saw was black metal against the glass. More Blue Suns were standing guard along the corridor walls. They looked more alert than the ones standing at the entrance. They watched the strangers with a suspicious and weary eye. Naruto's pace slowed for a moment as he heard what could barely be a conversation. Please stop, the first voice begged. Why should I? Asked the second voice. Please, I'm not done here. You're going to kill me. No, I won't. Stop it. No. The first voice was begging and the second voice was calm and cold. As they spoke, the sounds of flesh hitting flesh repeatedly and screams of pain echoed in the air. If any of them had questioned about what was happening, they were answered when they walked past a cage where a human prisoner was being beaten by a Turian guard. Every time the prisoner spoke to beg it all to stop, the guard would reply in the negative as he continued the beating. No one said anything as they watched the beating continued. It looked like a macabre dance with the way the guard moved as he beat the prisoner, doing a little jump every couple of steps. There was even music involved with the dance. The sound of his fist striking the prisoner was like a drum beat, while the cries of pain were like a high clear note. Do you need something, sir? The guard standing outside the cage asked Naruto. What's going on here? He asked back, not taking his gaze off the cell. Stress relief. We get pinned up here, and we need some way to get it out. Since the ratio of male to female in the Blue Suns here is practically non-existent, and not one of us is stupid enough to try to get frisky with one of the prisoners, this is the best way. Besides, the guy he's pounding on deserves it. Open the cage. He looked at the armor-robed man. Sir? He asked with a slightly puzzled voice. He did not get a reply, only a stare from a snarling fox on an ominously glowing helmet. Yes, sir, he finally said, drawing out the first word. He activated his Omni tool and opened the door. The beating guard looked up from his work as the door opened. Hey, what's the big? He began to say. His question was cut off when a hand gripped his face and slammed him into the wall behind him. Only the prisoner and the guard outside were surprised when Naruto did that. He held the Turian in a grip that could have shattered tree trunks. The glass behind him cracked, and would shatter if he put more pressure on him. "Pick on someone your own size," he growled at the guard, pressing him just a little harder against the glass. And just as soon as he had struck, he let go. The Turian fell to the ground in a heap. The blonde just kicked him out of the cage, and then walked out himself. He kept on walking, ignoring the look he got from the still conscious guard. His team fell in behind him. After a couple minutes of walking, they came upon another door. The corridor beyond had a branch splitting off to the right, but they didn't concern themselves with that one. The door straight ahead led into another block, and the word "out processing" was inscribed on the wall outside the corridor. "Looks like this is it," Jacob remarked. "Simple and clean, just the way the Akatsuki likes it," Miranda said as they walked through the door. The room on the other side was a large lobby, complete with waiting chairs lined up against the wall that there was a walkway between them. "You shouldn't speak so soon, Miranda," Naruto told her shortly. Something was bound to go wrong. This was just too easy. In fact, it was so easy that he was beginning to be suspicious. He had been in a prison before, both to take out and put in criminals. Each time, the warden was with his group the entire way. Things might have changed in 2,000 years, but he didn't think that would be one of them. A technician was working at a computer nearby, and he barely looked up to see them. "Our processing is through the door at the far side of the room," he told them in a bored tone before going back to his work. They saw the door and started making their way through the chairs to it. As they walked, Naruto had one question that came to mind. "How did he know where we were going?" "Warden Kirill must have told his men that we were coming in," Miranda said. "All of them? Even the technician?" "There aren't a great many people who come to buy prisoners here, and when one does, he tells everyone who's coming and where they need to go." "What are you thinking, Commander?" Quan Misley asked him as they approached the door, going past a couple of long black tables with chairs surrounding them. "I smell a trap." The door opened, but what was beyond was no corridor. It was a small room. No, it was a cell. It was a cell big enough to fit all of them in. "My apologies, Commander Uzumaki," the warden's voice said through the intercom, not sounding apologetic at all. "But if you are who you say you are, then you're more valuable as a prisoner than a customer." "What did I tell you?" Naruto said to Miranda, turning his head slightly to look at her. She just reached for her gun with a slightly annoyed look. "Drop your weapons and proceed into the open cell," Kirill ordered them. "You will not be harmed." "Oh, I doubt that," he remarked loudly as he turned around to face the room, his hands falling down to his sides. He felt the hunter nudge him in his side. A quick glance to her showed him looking in one particular angle. He followed that angle to see the camera in the room. It was on the ceiling overhead, looking down on them. At the other door, the technician began striding away from his computer. "Commander, get in that cell." He drew both guns in a blur of speed, one used to shoot the camera and the other to shoot the technician in the leg. His cry of pain was distant as he fell to the ground. "Quan Misley, work on him," he ordered the hunter. "Make it fast." Aye, Commander," she replied. She sprinted to the fallen technician and grabbed him by his shot leg. She started dragging him back to their side of the room. "Activate systems," the warden shouted. "Looks like we're going to have company," Jacob remarked as he pulled out his rifle. The exiting door opened just as Quan Misley reached their side and Blue Suns came in, weapons up and ready to use. The hunter ignored them, already focusing her attention on the technician. "Biotics if you got them," Naruto ordered as he opened fire with his pistols and ducking behind one of the tables for cover. Miranda glowed blue and threw her biotics at the Blue Suns, sending the first couple of guards back and down. The rest was still standing and were ready to fire. The hall became alive with sounds and noises from the guns firing. "Need covering fire," shouted Miranda as she ducked down to reload. Jacob provided the cover, and she was up in less than 5 seconds. One of the guards tried to move around the side of the room, hoping to get around the fight to reach them. Miranda promptly disabused him of that notion via a biotic throw to the head, smashing him into the wall. Meanwhile, Naruto was making his way forward, keeping under cover when he could. As he leaned out from cover, he took shots at the guards' legs. Apparently, their shields weren't as strong there. It only took a few shots for them to fall down in pain. It took them a few seconds to try and get back up again. He used those seconds to sprint across the room, flipping his guns and grabbing them by the barrels. As Jacob and Miranda continued to give cover fire, making sure those that tried to get up couldn't, he went to town on them. Armor and bones were broken, guns were knocked out of hands, and people were killed. After the last one fell, Naruto saw that more were coming through the corridor. He grabbed a grenade, primed it, and threw it through the door. They didn't seem to notice the grenade, running straight into it. The explosion barely rattled the room, a testament to how well it was built. Miranda and Jacob joined him at the door, Quan Misley following behind them. The blonde saw her and knew her work was done. Well? He asked. It seems that after we made contact with the warden about getting Jack, the tribe got in contact with him too, she answered. What did they offer? He didn't know. But it must have been something big if Carrillo was willing to turn us into them. Reinforce our processing. The warden's voice shouted over the intercom. Commander Naruto Uzumaki is loose, and that's our cue to leave, Naruto silently remarked, already turning for the open door. He paused when he saw what looked to be some kind of mechanical dog without a head come charging down the corridor. What the? He started to ask, only to stop and just shoot the thing. The bullet struck home and the thing tripped and fell the last few feet, coming to a dead stop just in front of the door. He didn't waste time wondering what it was. He just stepped over it and started going down the corridor. He would have gone the original way back if he didn't hear a guard shout, "Make sure he doesn't come this way." From the other corridor. Thanks for the directions, he sarcastically thought as he made the turn. His brisk pace down the corridor led him and his team to the guard in question in a minute, just beyond a curve in the corridor. He had a couple of those mechanical dogs with him, but one quick EMP grenade from Quan Misley rendered them useless, and a couple of bullets from Miranda and Jacob rendered him useless too. Naruto didn't even break pace. A door lay beyond the dead blue sundae. Beside it on the wall was inscribed Cell Block 2 Security. This was where they needed to go. When they walked through it, they found another technician standing at a computer. In front of him was a large window. "Get people down here right now!" He was shouting into the computer. "Uzumaki is coming this way. I repeat, Uzumaki is coming this way." He felt a cold, hard stare on the back of his neck, making him go silent. One peek at the corner of his eyes told him that Naruto was there already. "Oh shit! He's here!" He was trying to reach for a gun when Naruto fired one round. He fell to the ground with a hole in his head the size of a grape. "Miranda, check the computer," the blonde ordered. If this was the security room, that would be the computer they needed. "On it," she replied, striding over to the computer and pushing the dead body aside with her foot. The technician had left the computer running before getting shot, so she had an easy time getting what she needed. "Our target is here in this cell block," she announced. "In fact, he's right there." She pointed to the window. The rest of the team came to the window to see what she was pointing at. They saw one of the cryo tubes stationed inside a platform with machinery around it and 3 heavy mechs guarding it. So either that was standard procedure or Jack had really earned that reputation. "What's he doing there?" Quan Misley asked. They must have been prepping his departure when the warden changed his mind. "Open it," Naruto ordered her. Jacob was at her side and reading the screen. "Sir, if she does that, she'll have to unlock every single cell in the block. And then the other blocks will open. There's going to be a riot and people will be killed in the process," he told him. The armored blonde didn't say anything as he continued to stare out the window. "Sir," he said again, "it's a risk we're going to have to take if we want to get Jack out and onto our team." "Jacob," Miranda said to him. "It won't matter to us if we let the prisoners break free so long as we get what we came for." "Open it," Naruto said again, his voice firm. "Yes, sir," she replied, already tapping away at the controls. The alarms started wailing away in their ears as soon as she was done. "Warning! Warning! Cell Block 2 inmates have been released," the computer announced. "Repeat, all Cell Block 2 inmates have been released. All other cell blocks are pending release." "You idiot!" the warden shouted over the intercom. "What are you doing? Is there a way to shut him up?" Naruto asked. "Unfortunately not," Miranda answered. "He has control over the intercom." But they didn't hear anything else come from the intercom. "At least he's not monologuing." "Excuse me? Something I used to read as a kid, when I wanted to read. It wasn't much. He had rather preferred to train as a shinobi. Plus, the books he read always seemed to have the bad guys monologuing." Releasing containment tube in 3, 2, 1. The machines beyond the glass as the computer spoke. The mechs turned their attention to what was behind them as the tube inside the platform was free of its locks with loud hissing. The plier machine reached down and grabbed hold of the tube. It pulled it up, revealing the prisoner Jack inside. As the tube was pulled up, they all came to the window to watch it happen. What they saw surprised a few of them. "I thought you said Jack was a man," Jacob said to Miranda as his eyes remained glued to the window. "No, I did not. I had assumed," she replied. "Obviously, I was wrong." "You were more than wrong, Miranda. For fuck's sake, look at her. I can see her quite well, Jacob. Believe me, this is just as a surprise to me as it is to you. It's not me I'm worried about. His eyes slid alongside to look at the commander. Naruto had not said anything, and he did not do anything. If he had any reaction to what he was looking at, he wasn't showing it. He was wearing a helmet after all. The target came awake with a gasp of breath. She looked around wildly for a moment, trying to figure out what was going on. Her wide eyes hardened and she pulled at the clamps holding her down. She freed her right arm first, and then her left. The neck lock was torn off with those two hands and she fell out of the chair. She got back up on her feet with an impressive speed. The mech turned to face her, making her angry. Out of my way, fuckheads! She roared. They raised their weapons. She responded by charging forward with a war cry, raising her fist and beginning to glow with biotics. But the glow was not blue. Red? Said Jacob in surprise. But that shouldn't be possible. She swung her fist and the mechs were shattered into pieces and went flying into the walls, making them shake. She never stopped running or screaming. We need to get down there, Naruto finally said when she disappeared out of his sight. He lifted his gun, ready to shoot the glass. Commander, the door at the side leads down, Miranda told him, pointing to the door. It was standard procedure. He was already at the door before she finished speaking. He wanted to get down there as soon as he could. As soon as the door opened, he went through. Warning! Warning! The ship announced as he flew down the stairs. All cell blocks have been opened. All inmates have been released. Repeat, all cell blocks have been opened. All inmates have been released. The door at the base of the stairs opened, and he charged into the room. The platform was still there, but the scattered remains of the mechs laid there on the floor. And there was no sign of her. Damn it, where did she go? He asked as he heard the others catch up to him, looking around to figure out the answer. He found the answer in the form of a hole in the wall beneath the glass. He went for the hole, finding himself in some kind of maintenance tunnel. She did this? Jacob asked as he followed the blonde and saw the tunnel. It looked like a storm had followed after an explosion, leaving a burning mess behind. I've seen a Magium-enhanced chakra grenade do less damage than this, Quan Misley commented. That was the most effective grenade she had ever had the privilege, or horror, of wielding. I'm beginning to think that she's going to be a liability, Miranda remarked. Naruto shut that idea down. We're finding her, he told her. All guards, restore order. Lethal force authorized. But don't kill Jack. Tex, lockdown. Lockdown. The warden shouted through the intercom. If his commands were having any effect, they wouldn't know. The ship started to rumble. Distant sounds were heard, like a faint drum beaten once and fading before they could really hear it. The computer began rattling out information. Sectors 7, 9, and 11 have lost life support. No survivors. They found another hole in the tunnel leading out of it. When they stepped through, they came onto the outskirts of a battle in the middle of the cell block. Prisoners were charging en masse at the guards, overwhelming them with pure force. The Blue Suns and their mechs were keeping them back, but it was a slowly losing battle. Every guard that was taken down, his gun was taken off his body. The lights had turned red and the alarms were blaring a constant wail in the ears. The faint drums were now loud eruptions. The glass corridor that had stretched from side to side right through the middle of the cell block laid shattered and in pieces. It was chaos. Don't go there, Naruto ordered himself as he felt a piece of his past come surging up from the depths of his mind to the forefront. Don't go there. You don't have that kind of luxury. He forced it back down, not wanting to go there again. Once was enough. All prisoners, return to your cells immediately or I will open every airlock on this ship. Kirill shouted through the intercom. The prisoners had a single united answer. Fuck you, where did she go? Miranda asked as she searched the battle, trying to find the target. The fighting was always in motion, sometimes going back and sometimes forth, making it hard for her to find a single face constantly, let alone a specific one. That way, Naruto answered, pointing to the door on the far side of the room, which looked like a long way from where they were standing. How do you know? He gave her one long look before remembering that she couldn't see his face. Quickest way out from sight in this position, he answered. Plus, there's a trail of wreckage leading that way. If he hadn't been looking for it, it would have completely slipped past his eye. There was trail of shattered mech and dead Blue Suns and prisoners. At first it might have seemed random, but if he looked at it from a certain angle, from the position of the nearby bridge, it was a straight line. They were hidden by the way the fight was moving back and forth. He started for the bridge and the others followed. All right, listen up, he told his team once they reached the bridge. We're going to be hitting the ground. Keep your focus on the exit point and nothing else. Anyone gets in your way, make sure they get out of the way fast and keep moving. Do not stop for anything. Just keep moving. It was something he was more than familiar with, having done it many times during the war. He put the guns away and placed his armored hands on the railing. He stood there in silence, watching the battle move and flow. His eyes were watching the point below the bridge, where they would land. He watched for that moment of hesitation where someone would not take a step forward, back, left, or right. That was the moment he needed to make an opening and start running. There! One blue sun stepped back and the guard in front of him didn't follow. He leapt over the railing and landed in the open space. The nanosecond his feet touched the ground, he started running in a straight shot. His arms shot out in front of him, pushing and shoving anyone who was in his way out of it. His vision became focused on the exit point. Anything else less important wasn't needed right now. Someone fell, he jumped over them. Someone tried pushing him, he pushed back harder. Someone wanted to fight? He avoided the blow and kept moving. The distance between him and the exit point grew closer and closer. Someone tried swinging at him, but all he gave was a good hard punch to the stomach and kept moving. Coming out of the mass onto the exit point was breaking the surface of the ocean and taking in that first gulp of air. It felt glorious. His quick pace came to a slow halt before he turned to look at where he came from, watching the others come out of there too. Miranda was the first one out, followed by both Quan Misley and Jacob at the same time. He absently noted that the battle was swinging in favor for the prisoners before turning around and heading for the door. They followed. The door closing behind them muted the sounds of battle to the tone enough to be in an ear but not enough to make one try and figure it out. They stood in a small corridor that took a turn to the left, and then to the right in a U-turn that disappeared behind a wall. A couple of dead bodies laid in their way but were ignored. "Lockdown in blocks 4, 7, and 8. Shouted Kirill over the intercom as they made their way through the tunnel, going out the other door. They found themselves in the midst of another battle, albeit smaller than the previous one. The hall has been breached in sectors 12, 14, and 30. No survivors, the ship computer announced over the noise. Find Jack. Full alert. Find Jack. Kirill shouted over the intercom. If the panic note in his voice was any indicator, he was getting worried. But his being worried wasn't Naruto's problem. Finding Jack before the Blue Suns did was. Alright, where did she go? He asked himself as he looked at the room. The battle was practically over in the prisoner's favor. He wouldn't have to run through them all to get to the other side because there wasn't a door on the other side. When he looked up, he saw how close they were to the glass corridor. We must be close to the exit. Now he just had to get up there. Fortunately, there was a ramp nearby that led to the upper floor. They went for the ramp, avoiding the fighting as they went. They could tell how the prisoners were winning by just how loud they were shouting and by how few Blue Suns were left in the fight. There might have been a few skilled engineers in the prisoners' numbers due to the fact that the heavy mechs used by the guards were wrecks on the ground, or that meant they had good biotics. Personally, Naruto was going with the biotics. As they reached the door and went through into another tunnel, they heard Kirill on the intercom again. All guards to cell block 1. When the next door opened and they saw what prisoners they're getting shot by the rifle in the warden's hands, they figured out that they were in cell block 1. There were Blue Suns pouring out of every door that was there, save for the one Kirill stood in front of. Apparently, that was the one they need to get through. The guards were forming up around the warden, serving as a shield to him as he stood above them all like a king. When he saw the armored and cloaked blonde, he swung his gun down at him and started shooting. Do you realize how big of a pain in the ass you are? He asked, saying each word with a shot from the gun. I could have sold you and lived like a king, but you are too much trouble. I should just do the tribe a favor and kill you now. At least I can recapture Jack. While the others were diving for cover, Naruto had just walked forward as he put his guns away. The bullets that hit him bounced off, deflected by his shielding. He still felt their impact force and his pace slowed because of them. But he kept moving, his shields replenishing faster than they could finally fall. His eyes saw the room. There were 2 ramps leading up to the second level, which the Blue Suns protected like a living shield. If he got past them, there was a smaller ramp leading upwards to Kirill and the exit point. That many guards to get through and Kirill with that kind of power in his gun? No way were they getting out just by charging or attacking. He was going to do this the smart way. Fortunately, he knew just the way. There was a ramp that led downward into the room. He didn't know what it was for originally, but he knew what it could be used for. The bullets were still hitting him as he walked down into it. Then he looked up. "Are you done?" he asked Kirill. "You can't shoot me all day. I'm not going to fall. But then again, I should have expected it from a slaving coward like yourself." The bullets stopped firing. "What did you just say? You don't have the balls to actually try and fight me yourself, do you? You're just going to stand up there and keep shooting me. You must have a tiny fragile ego if you keep doing that. Or is it something else?" He raised a pinky and flexed it suggestively. "You think you can insult me, Uzumaki? You think you can just stand there and think you can get away it?" the Turian demanded. He said nothing. The Blue Suns began looking up at their warden, wondering what he was going to do about it. The silence in the room dragged on as the alarms kept wailing away. Kirill was beginning to see the doubt in the eyes of his men. He got down from where he stood, put his gun away, deactivated his tech enhancement, and started pushing his way through them all. "Get out of my way!" he snarled at them all. He came to the rail and jumped down to where he was. "You want to fight out, Uzumaki? Fine by me," he told the armored human standing there, rising up his hands. "I didn't get to be warden by just using my gun. The tribe told me about you. You couldn't fight off a fly now that you don't have your..." The first move Naruto made was to break the two arms, making the room echo with the sounds of twin cracks. Before the Turian could even scream in pain, a kunai shot out of his right sleeve, letting him grab hold and plunge it into Kirill's throat. "Idiot," he said quietly as the former warden fell dead to the floor, pulling his kunai out in the process. The guards all drew their weapons and aimed to fire, only to feel like all warmth had left their bodies. They stood there in horror as the spirit of death loomed over them all, grinning psychotically. Laughter seemed to cackle through the grin, yet they did not see the lips move. They didn't see the weapon in its hands. It was too blurry to see clearly. Maybe it was large. Maybe it was small. Or maybe there was no weapon and they saw the hands closing and opening as they reached out for them. They had to remind themselves to breathe. Their thoughts ran wild with either praying for mercy from the deity they worshipped or just plain help. If they could move, it would have been a surprise to them. As the spirit of death loomed closer and closer, they found their eyes followed the armored creature cloaked in shadows controlling it stalking towards them. The fox on its helmet seemed to come alive, growling and snarling at them all. "Move aside," Naruto commanded as he kept his full intent to kill on them all. He had no idea what they were seeing, but it didn't matter so long as they were feeling it. They broke apart for him as soon as the words had left his mouth. Beneath his helmet, he smirked and signaled his team to follow him. They walked up the ramp, through the guards who were supposed to act like a shield, then up the second ramp and out the door. The spirit of death vanished from their sight, and the Blue Suns found they could breathe more easily and feel warmth again. It took them only a moment to realize that whoever had a bladder before had now emptied it. It made the whole ramp smell. Then the prisoners swarmed the room, completely outnumbering them. Her boots hitting the metal floor was the only sound she preferred to hear while she ran. It was her way of reminding her that she had been let out. And she was taking advantage of that simple fact. She should probably thank the idiot who was dumb enough to let her loose. But first things were first. She had to get off the damned ship. As she ran towards the door that led to the nearest docking area, she saw two of those Blue Suns fuckers standing in her way. "I will destroy you!" she screamed out as she raised her fist and flared her red biotics. The one on the left she threw against the window, making it crack and killing him. The one on the right she hurled into the pipes on the other side and didn't care if he had died. She needed to get off the ship. She saw a ship docked and thought that she finally had some luck. But then she saw the emblem on its side. "The Akatsuki?" she demanded out loud. "You've gotta be fucking kidding me." She started to rage right then and there. She kept throwing her fists out, wanting to punch something. Why did her luck have to come back and hit her upside the head now? It could have at least given her a day or two so she could finally get off the ship. Fuck. As she raged, she noticed that the guard she hadn't checked was getting back up. She turned on him fully, glad for the chance to beat his life out of him. She raised her fist and took a step towards him. But then something flew through the air and embedded itself in his head, killing him. She stared at his body for a moment, and then looked at the killing weapon. What the? The shape of it didn't make sense to her, until a memory flashed in her mind and she knew what it was. "A kunai?" she said, trying out the name and seeing how it fit. She knew what it meant now. "Who the fuck uses a fucking kunai?" "I do," a man's voice said to her right. She turned and saw 4 humans at the door. 2 were women and 1 was a guy. Their leader must have been the 4th guy, mostly because he was the one who talked. She didn't know if he was a guy or not from all that armor and robe. But the voice sounded like a guy, and that was what she was going with. "What the hell do you want?" she demanded, already on her guard. She saw on the emblem on the brunette's uniform. It was the same as the ship. "To get you out of here," the leader answered. "Yep, that was definitely a guy." She barked out a laugh at that. "What? Do I look like an idiot to you?" "You're Akatsuki. What's that got to do with this? They've been on my ass for years. Any time I get free, they put a huge bounty on me. That's why the Warden thought he hit the jackpot with me. She's destroyed Akatsuki property and killed Akatsuki personal. Hence the bounty," the brunette explained. "You die first," she promised. "It might be better if we just knock her out," the other woman suggested. "You want to try that?" "Be my guest, Quan Misley, think," the leader said, barely turning his cloaked helmet to look at her. "Despite the fact that she has biotics, do you really think that beating her is going to be different?" "No, sir." "Good." He turned his head back to look at her. "Don't worry. We're not going to attack you," she scoffed. Like that would have worked for them. "Smart move," she told him. "And if you want me to come with you, you're going to make it worth my time. Join me and my team and I'll do what I can for you. Don't make promises you can't keep." He didn't say anything at first. "If I make a promise, I stick to it. I never go back on my word." She felt a surge of something travel through her body. She didn't know why that happened. But of a sudden, she felt like that she could trust the man in front of her. She shook herself out of that feeling. "Get a grip on yourself, woman," she told herself harshly. "I bet your ship has a lot of Akatsuki databases. I want to look at those files, see what Akatsuki has on me." "Done," he said without hesitation. "Commander, you're not authorized to do that," the brunette complained. "Oh, it upsets the cheerleader," she said sarcastically. "Miranda, you don't get a say in the agreement," the leader said without looking at said cheerleader. "She gets to look at those files, no exceptions, no complaints, no arguments." "Clear?" "Yes, sir." She was glad to hear all those words, but she was still doubtful. "You'd better be straight up with me, otherwise you won't like what'll happen," she threatened the leader. "Don't worry, you can trust me," he told her. She felt that was true and she wanted to. But she didn't live this long by being stupid. "Trust you? I don't even know you, fuckface. Why in the name of whatever idiot that created this universe should I trust you?" He reached up, pulled the hood off of his helmet, and then pressed against the back of his head. The snarling fox on the helmet split apart in 3 parts. They peeled back across his head, rapidly shrinking until they disappeared behind the back. But it wasn't the helmet that her attention. It was the head under it. Blonde hair, blue eyes, whisker-like birthmarks. It was like she was looking at herself, only as a guy. "What the fuck?" "Trust me," he told her. "There's a lot to talk about. But for now, let's get off this ship." "Why yeah, sure," she said in reply. What the fuck was she supposed to say? He walked over to the blue sun and pulled out the kunai, dropping it into his sleeve. "By the way, you got an actual name or should I stick with Jack?" That question snapped her out of her stunned stupor. "Jack? That's a name I pulled off a dead guy to make sure my ass wasn't killed one time," she replied. "I've got my own name. It's Ruko." Location: Freedom's Progress. The second they had gotten back to Freedom's Progress, Naruto stormed into the hologram room and waited impatiently for the thing to get working. When it finally did and he found himself in the office of the Elusive Man, the first words out of his mouth were, "What the fuck is going on here?" The Elusive Man just took a drag from his cigarette and blew the smoke out. The silence went on and on. "I am assuming that you were successful in recruiting Jack to your cause?" he finally asked. "When did Miranda tell you?" "Before you left, obviously," he replied before taking another puff. "You still haven't told me what the fuck is going on here. Perhaps if I had a little more information, I could tell you. I've seen some things in my life, including when I woke up from that rock. But this one, so far, has taken the cake. Now, could you please explain to me why, in the name of everything and anything that is holy and scared in this universe, I have a twin sister on my team?" The Elusive Man didn't bat an eye at his shout, even when it could have rattled the room. "What makes you think that I or the Akatsuki has something to do with that? She has a fear and a hatred of you guys that doesn't just stem from a bounty, and she asked for any data files you had on her," Naruto said. "And if the tribe had created her, why would they bother to come after me?" "Valid points, all," he conceded as he took a drag. "I will admit, Commander, that this organization is not perfect. On occasion, there have been people in my command who believe that this war of ours needs to be more aggressive, and seek new ways of doing that. The Phoenix Group was such one group. They believed that the solution lay in having biotics and chakra achieve perfect harmony inside a host's body. That still doesn't explain her. I had a few informants in the group relay information back to me during their course of activity. They believed that the way to reach this harmony was to have a host who had never been in contact with Ezo before in their life. Since that narrowed down the margins for a test subject, they decided to try and clone people from history. As you could probably guess, you were one of the first they decided to clone. That's impossible. You say that and yet you brought back the truth with you, he remarked as he took a puff. He reached over and tapped the ashes into the tray. How? The blonde asked. The specifics were not given to me, but I was led to believe that they broke into the Shinobi Depository back on Earth and took a sample of your blood and chakra. He didn't know about the Shinobi Depository, but he did know about the Konoha Depository. Once they were officially made genin, each team of new shinobi would go to the depository and give some of their blood and chakra to be stored for later use. What those later uses were, he never found. Now, he probably should have had. And so, they cloned me and a lot of other people. No, the Elusive man said. I was told that your samples had the best results out of the entire batch that they had managed to swipe, so they decided to solely focus on yours. And while they were successful in creating several clones, they were never successful in achieving their goals. He didn't really hear or care about that last bit. It was the sentence before that he focused on. You're telling me that there are more of them out there? No. Until she reappeared on our radar a few years later, we had assumed that the Phoenix Group and their whole project had been wiped out when their base was destroyed. Now we know that she's a survivor. What's with her red biotics? I thought that stuff was supposed to be blue. He took a drag. Miranda informed me of that, and I do not have an answer for you, Commander. What I do have is theories. One theory is that on some level the Phoenix Group was successful in their attempt to have biotics and chakra function in one body. Another theory is that the diluted blood of yours that she carries still remembers what it was once before. He took another drag from his cigarette and blew out the smoke. Now, perhaps we can move on to more serious business? Such as? Asked Naruto. It is time that you got out of Freedom's Progress and out into the galaxy, Commander. Your coming back and consistently will cause those in the tribe who are hunting to take notice. Once they take notice, they will find this colony and attempt to establish an ambush for you. Whether said ambush would work would depend on a number of things, but the fact remains that Akatsuki lives would be lost. This is something I will not allow. What do you know? An Akatsuki member who cares, he remarked, not giving a damn if the sarcasm in his voice was obvious from outside the door and in space. If you're quite done, Commander? The Elusive man asked him as he dropped ash into the tray. When the blonde didn't say anything in reply, he continued. Fortunately, I have had a ship and a crew being readied for you. I've also found a pilot I think you might like. I hear he's one of the best. Someone you can trust. A screen appeared at his side and he flicked at it. Good luck, Commander, and good hunting. The office faded away to black and then back to the hologram room. Hey, Commander, a familiar voice said from behind him, making him turn around fast. Just like old times, huh? He stared at Joker for the longest time. Then he smiled. Hopefully it won't end with me having to save your butt. We are talking about you, sir. Doesn't that come with the program? Joker asked with a smug smirk on his lips. He wore an Akatsuki uniform like it was his old one. But even though he was trying to keep things light, there was tightness around the corner of his lips and sadness in his eyes. He laughed, ignoring what he saw on his face. Together, they walked out of the room and out of the communication building. Joker took the lead, heading towards the docks. So, how bad was it after what happened? Naruto asked him. It was bad. Everything fell apart without you, Commander, he said in a somber voice. Everything you stirred up, the Council just wanted it gone. Team was broken up, records were sealed, and I was grounded. The Alliance took away the one thing that mattered to me. Hell yeah, I joined the Akatsuki. As they approached the spaceport, Naruto cast a sidelong look at him. You really trust an organization with that name and history attached to it? They're not all bad. They rescued you and are willing to let me fly. Just be careful about them. That's all I'm saying, Joker. You do realize that this is a different Akatsuki than the one you used to know, right? He asked as they went through the doors. Yes, but my point still stands. If you say so, Joker replied. He paused for a moment as he walked and then said, It made the news, you know. Normandy clan broken and separated. The blonde looked over at him. Normandy clan? He repeated like he had just heard Sasuke say that he was right. Yeah, that's what they've been calling the team ever since you became a Spectre. Didn't you ever read or see the news? he asked while they climbed up a flight of stairs. Not if I have to. I have a very healthy distrust of the media ever since the war. They had a bad habit of taking my words and the words of every other shinobi who spoke to them and twist them around until they made us look like we didn't know what we were doing in this war. It got very irritating. Oh, okay. Still, you have to admit that the Normandy clan isn't a bad title. At least they didn't try something with numbers. Saints only know that it would have turned out, especially since people were coming and going on the ship. That's true. They came to a stop before a window to the outside docks. If he concentrated, he could make out a ship on one of the larger pads. I take it this is the ship that I'm getting? Joker smiled. Oh, trust me, Commander. This is more than just a ship. He pulled out a small radio from one of the pockets in his pants. Light her up. The lights on the docking pad turned on, revealing the ship there. Naruto bit back the noise of surprise coming up from his throat at the sight of the familiar ship. It was like he had just seen it yesterday, and he left it to get a new paint job. The only downside to it was the emblem on its side. How long did you know? He asked. They only told me last night, his pilot told him. It's good to be home, huh, Commander? Those words chomped down on the good feeling he was having. Joker, I haven't been home in over 2,000 years. Joker didn't even flinch. Hey, with the way you lived and wrecked the place, I'd say you could call this a home. The smile that had fallen off his lips came back. Still upset I shot up the ship, huh? I'm never letting go of it. He shook his head and rolled his eyes. If it had been an apartment building, you would have been the super, a fact I would have gladly lorded over you. They both chuckled at that. I guess we're going to need to name her. The side of the hull was empty of words. That needed to be corrected. Joker looked at him. You thinking what I'm thinking, Commander? He asked. Oh yeah, the blonde replied. They knew just the name. Location, the Normandy. Once the name had been printed onto the sides of the hull, Joker took it into orbit and then Naruto, along with his team, took a shuttle up to it, entering through the airlock. Coming onto the bridge, it felt like Naruto had left, and the place was improved. Improved, but still looking the same. As he walked down the hallway, seeing the people sitting at the computers working away, he saw the command center ahead. It was bigger than the one he had been in before. The galactic map was still there, looming over everyone but still rooted in its place. Just in front of it was a hologram of the ship. People stood at the console around it, taping away as they worked. Welcome aboard to the new Normandy, Commander, Jacob said to him as he looked at everything that was in sight. He took a couple of steps forward to see it all and then turned around to look at them. What's different? He asked them. The first obvious thing he had noticed was that the new ship had been twice as large as the original. The hallway, the cockpit, and the command center all looked improved, but he was certain that there was more. Miranda took the lead. As you've already guessed, we've made some significant improvements to the successor of the State Route 1. It's called the Normandy. Joker shouted from the cockpit. Remember that. She looked back at him with a slight frown. When she turned her head, she saw Naruto had a slight smirk on his face. You heard the pilot. Ruko wasn't so subtle. She barked out a laugh from where she leaned against the wall. Quan Misley stood near Miranda, almost looking like a bodyguard. She didn't bat an eye at his sister, Cammy, that was still hard to wrap his head around. Very well, she said. There have been some significant changes and improvements to the State Route 2. We are on Deck 2. This is the Combat Information Center area. I know. I've been here before. He was certain he heard a snicker coming from the cockpit. Again, she didn't bat an eyelash. You will find the armory on the port side and the lab on the starboard side via those doors. She pointed to the two doors at the end of each side of the room. Between the two of them will be communication room where the team will gather post-mission. You will also be able to contact the Elusive man via hologram in there. The third deck consists of the crew's quarters, mess, and bathrooms, along with the main battery, my own office, and the medical bay. I believe that you will know the doctor we have stationed on the ship. It's Chukwas! Joker shouted. Thank you? Naruto shouted back. He looked at Miranda. Continue. There are also observation rooms on each side of the ship on Deck 3. I believe that the starboard observation room holds the library and the port has the entertainment and bar. Good, I could use a fucking drink, Ruko stated. I'll join you, Kwamisli told her. Deck 4 is the engineering deck, Miranda continued, ignoring both of them. You will find the drive core there, obviously. Deck 5 is the hangar. Due to the doubled size of the ship, we will not be able to land on some planets. It is necessary to use a shuttle because of this. Don't forget about the last deck. The pilot shouted again. Joker, why are you shouting? Use the intercom. Naruto shouted back. It's more fun to do this way. Of course it is. Even as he shouted, he laid on the sarcasm. Commander, please, Miranda said, trying to get his attention. Deck 1 is your own personal quarters. You will find that it has a terminal for your private use, a full bathroom, your own personal locker for weapons and armor, and an office desk. There is also a fish tank there for any fish you wish to keep. Why would I keep fish in space? He asked her. The designers figured that you needed a hobby. I'm calling it the Fox's Den, Joker announced. He smiled at that. Should have figured someone would say it, he thought to himself. He turned his attention back to the Akatsuki officer. What kind of weapons do we have? Fuck it, I'm outta here. Going to go have that drink, Ruko said as she walked away. Quan Misley followed her. We have 2 of the Javelin torpedo launchers as well as the Guardian weapons system, Miranda told Naruto. The ship also has the traditional mass accelerator cannon, but it now comes with an addition feature. What kind of feature? He asked. The Akatsuki has been able to, in essence, switch the EZO requirement for the cannon with a chakra amplifier. If a chakra user utilizes it, it transfers into the cannon. Huh? He asked after a paused moment of silence. That didn't make sense. It's also a chakra cannon now, Joker explained from the cockpit. It can also do jutsu too. Yes, Miranda agreed, trying to take the conversation back into her own control. If the utilizer casts a jutsu through the cannon's chakra amplifier, the cannon will cast the same jutsu. So if I were to use a Gokakyu no jutsu into the cannon would be shooting a giant fireball into space, Jacob answered. He considered that for a moment. It was interesting, but he couldn't do anything with it, due to his problem. What's the downside of it? There was always a downside. It takes a little longer to recharge than the mass accelerator part of the cannon, and the switch has to be done manually, which would be a factor if we come into a battle. How long would it take to make the swap? 1.5 minutes at normal speed, she answered. And if a shinobi does it? It hasn't been tried yet. What kind of armor does it have? Ablative, Jacob answered. It'll protect the ship from solid weapons, but anything else, and we'll have to do some fancy flying. Hey, what's this wee stuff? And have you forgotten who's flying this beautiful thing? Joker shouted. How is he able to hear everything we're saying? We're a good distance from the cockpit, Miranda asked aloud. The odd thing was that she wasn't asking anyone in particular. That is until a digital voice replied. Mr. Moro is eavesdropping through the intercom. What was that? Naruto demanded, his head looking rapidly around and his voice getting just a little bit higher. Was that a ghost? Does this ship already have a ghost on board? I thought that was supposed to take years or something. Miranda did not look amused, but Jacob did. Don't worry, Commander. There aren't any ghosts on the ship, he assured the blonde. Are you sure? Yes. Oh, okay. He calmed himself down from that. So what was it? An image of a blue sphere on a blue pole appeared out of the console beside him. I am the Normandy's artificial intelligence. The crew likes to refer to me as EDI. WHHHYYYYY. It stands for Enhanced Defense Intelligence, Miranda explained, hence EDI. Her core will be on the 3rd deck. Okay. He looked at the orb. So, do you do anything or do you just stand there and look pretty? I am not standing on anything and I do not understand what you mean by pretty, it replied, white lines moving in tandem to the voice. During combat, I operate the electronic warfare and cyber warfare suites. Beyond that, I cannot interfere with the ship's systems. I observe and offer analysis and advice. Nothing more, it finished. Then it vanished from sight. Interesting, he finally said. What else was he supposed to say to that? Is there anything else? We need gas, Joker shouted. We can't fly this baby without fuel. Then take care of it, he shouted back. Aye, Commander. Taking us to the nearest refueling station. Jacob and I should go to our posts, Miranda said. Come find us if you have any questions. She walked away without a second glance. Jacob, on the other hand, saluted before leaving. He was left standing there, unsure of what to do next. He had moments like these before, and it usually took him a moment to figure out what exactly to do next. I guess I'll go take a look at my room, he finally decided. He swung around the big triangular console and headed for the elevator when a redhead turned to him and said, Commander, if I could have a moment of your time? He stopped and looked at her. She was standing at a computer right next to the steps that went up to the galactic map. She wore an Akatsuki uniform, black with red highlights with the cloud on the sleeve, and her hair was cut short in a businesswoman's fashion. Yes, I'm Yeoman Kelly Chambers. I've been assigned as your administrative assistant. I'll manage your messages, and help you monitor the crew. She paused for a moment, and then spoke again. And I must say it is a great honor to work under you, Lord Uzumaki. She bowed her head at those last words. Bring the head up, he ordered her. I'm not a lord. My apologies, Commander. She figured that was safe. Was there anything else besides your intro? As a matter of fact, yes, she answered. She turned her attention to the computer on the other side of the steps. That is your private terminal, where you can access the messages sent to you. But before you can do so, you will need to log in your password before accessing. If you could do that right now, that would be great. He looked at her for a moment, and then walked over to the computer. It started up as he came close, already at the login screen. He thought about it for a moment, and then smiled. His fingers tapped on the keys, entering the password he knew no one would get. It was accepted and the mail opened. He closed it right away and walked towards the elevator. Thank you, Commander, Chambers said. You're welcome, Kelly, he replied. The elevator doors opened and then closed after he stepped. There were 5 buttons on the wall next to the doors, all glowing orange. His finger pressed against the button that said Deck 1, and he felt the elevator move upwards. When it stopped, he was a little surprised by it. That was faster than I thought, he remarked as the doors opened. Have they improved the elevators in 2 years? After a moment, he figured it was a question for another time. There was a door in front of him with the obvious wording by its side. He stepped out of the elevator and took the step to the left necessary to stand before it. The lock turned from red to green the instant he was there, and the door opened, revealing the captain's quarters. The first thought he had as he stepped in was, well, it's definitely different from my last one. That had just been a room with a bed and a desk. The first thing he noticed was the aquarium on his left. The water was bright blue, probably because of the lighting, and had a few plants in there. But there were no fish in the tank. He didn't know whether he should put fish in or try to convince who put the tanks in to take them out. Across from the aquarium was what looked to be a little office space. It was shielded from the rest of the cabin by a glass that was meant to hold something, what he wasn't sure of, and by the wall. The desk that sat beneath the glass stretched from it to the wall, where it stopped under a couple of cells. A chair sat before the computer terminal, and it looked like it was made of leather. There were a few other things on the desk, mostly office supplies with a few folders. Behind the office was a door that opened into the bathroom. It was a complete bathroom, with a sink, a toilet, and a shower. It was a little weird to have them all in the same room. He was more used to having a shower with a curtain around it. But that was probably what the door was for. Down the steps from the door and the office was the rest of the cabin. Next to the steps was a lounge area consisting of a big table with the lounge chairs on 2 sides of it, against the glass and the wall. Next to it was another desk, but it was much more casual than the other one. Across from the desk in the lounge was a locker. When he went over to it and opened it, he saw that it was already stocked full of clothing with a few hangers left empty. At the bottom was a small stand, big enough to put a couple of things on it. Between the middle of the 2 areas was the bed. It was a big bed, easily big enough to make 2, possibly 3, people comfortable. If he had to guess, or even bet on it, he would say that they expected him to have guests up here. There were 2 bedside tables, one to each side of the bed. One had the lamp and the other had the time. Next to the lamp was another chair, perhaps to read something when he was feeling bored. He saw everything that was there in one final sweep of the room. It was all the same. Then he realized something. I'm wiped. He needed to relax. He pulled his guns out of their holsters and put them on the table with the light. Then he pulled out the kunai he had and put them on the table too. Then came the shuriken. Once his weapons were put away, he walked over to the closet, taking off the robe as he went. He hung it up on a hanger. He then reached around to the back of his armor and pulled off the starting piece that was his helmet. He stared at it for a moment, seeing how it was a thin half-circle of a thing with the orange glass glittering at the top like teeth. He put it on the stand. The gloves and boots came off next. A simple hard tug on each deactivated the armor, collapsing it down to the original size. He put them on the stand as well. He didn't see a hanger or a place on the stand for the main body piece, so he just placed it up against the back of the closet. The jumpsuit came off next, practically by itself. Even though there was a giant tear in the back, he could still put it on a hanger. Not really one to be boxer-clad in his own room, he fished out a pair of sweatpants and a hoodie to put on. He closed the closet and walked over to the bed, sitting down. It certainly felt comfortable. He was half tempted to fling himself onto it like he had when he was a kid and bone-dead tired. But he wasn't that level of tired, just tired. A lot of things had happened in the span of a few days and he just needed to take it all in. He brought his hand up to rub his head but accidentally activated his Omni tool instead. Damn it, he groused as he began to lower it, trying to turn it off. But then something caught his eye. A small message was telling him that he had a video message waiting for him. Isn't this thing supposed to alert me when I get something like that? He silently asked as he opened up the video. It sprang up to full screen on his Omni tool, and he found he was looking at himself. "Hey," the him in the video said. "Looks like you found the first one. Well, you were going to get it first either way. The others wouldn't work unless you played this one first. Hopefully Tali came through for us." "Tali?" he silently repeated as he looked at the video. He didn't look so good there, like he had been on the run and hadn't gotten sleep in some time. Was that a beard on his face? Okay, pay attention me. You're going to be running into things that don't make any sense. Knowing our luck, that's already happened with the Akatsuki and the tribe. You're going to be running into even more things that don't make sense, but it will in the long run, trust me. Right now, I need you to do a couple of things. The first is if and whenever you experience some kind of blackout, don't panic. It's for the best and will pay off in the long run. For now, just go with the fact that you don't know what happened when you're out. The second is that I need you to find the rest of these messages. I couldn't keep them all in one spot, so you're going to have to go out and find them. The third and most important is that you keep going with whatever has been given to you and trust only those who have your back. He looked to the side, like someone was talking to him. My time's up here. Remember, find the other messages and trust only those who have your back. Good luck, not that you'll need it. He reached for the camera and the video froze. Naruto just stared at the video. What the hell? He said aloud. When did he get this? Then he remembered when Tali helped turn on his Omni tool. She must have installed it then. But why would she do that? And why would he leave a message like that for himself? What was going on here? Kemi, take it. This is just too much in too short a time. He looked at the frozen video. Maybe if he watched it again, something might come at him. But then he saw the date stamp on the video, and it was suddenly all he could see. It was marked 2 weeks after his memories stopped. Codex entry: Weapons/Equipment, Praetorian Armory's Ghost Class Anti-Material Rifle. With the rise of chakra-powered slug throwers from the Alliance starting to become popular, Citadel Council arms manufacturers soon saw that their technology pool had stagnated long ago, and that there was no innovation whatsoever for the past hundreds of years, while humans continued to create new weapons based on the energy known as chakra, which would bring the bullet, and in turn slug throwers, back into prominence even to beings without chakra systems. This would cause them to produce nothing but high-end firearms that had the potential to outperform human firearms. The first foray into this attempt to outdo the human manufacturers was the Praetorian Armory's Ghost-class anti-material rifle, a weapon that incorporates a miniature mass effect core to increase the speed and impact of the 14.5mm round that is fired, which is enough to make it a threat to tanks and tank crews. And due to it being equipped with a highly sophisticated silencer system, the Ghost lives up to its name. However, for all its power, the Ghost suffers from drawbacks. Due to the excessively large amounts of power needed to penetrate tank armor, the rifle can only fire 4 shots in succession before it needs to be reloaded. The power behind the shots makes it such that the Ghost requires far more maintenance than other weapons to keep in use, which is made even more difficult given its complicated design. Due to the fact that it incorporates a mass effect core in the design, even the most stripped-down version of the rifle demands cutthroat prices. In spite of all its faults, the Ghost has its uses. It is normally purchased by end-of-day organizations/ED, explosive ordnance disposal units, due to the fact that it has an extremely good range, up to 2.2 kilometers, and the impact of the rounds is usually enough to detonate most explosives, allowing EOD units to detonate bombs from a safe distance. It is also a fairly good defensive anti-vehicle weapon, especially if the shooter is skilled enough to know where the drivers are. Rumors abound of experiments using a Ghost retrofitted to use bullets with Element 0 mixed in with the gunpowder in an attempt to lower the cost of the gun.